Albert Einstein once said if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that it is stupid. What was your moment when someone judged you like that? When I went to a state university, they opened the freshman orientation with that quote, then said that they want to help build students' curriculum to their needs and what works with them. And then we were given very specific classes that we needed to take, several of which the professors said were weed out classes. They proceeded to judge every fish on its ability to climb. Fuck, I hate this aspect of college. If you teach a class with the sole purpose of weeding people out, you shouldn't be teaching. Weeding out is what the job market does. Your job is to present the information. In high school I was really good at debate and aced all my government classes. However, I had to take a pottery class for an art credit. I sucked. Hardcore. My vase looked like some bees had taken crack before they built their hive. The teacher legitimately thought I was special needs. 2 years later I was working retail to help put myself through college. I ran into the teacher one day. "It is so awesome you have a job. Good for you." I felt like Kevin Malone being patronized by Holly Flax. My mother loves to tell this story to her friends. That fucking blows. Throwing is hard. I can hand build literally anything and get praised for it, but I can't fucking throw to save my life. Found Jeff Winger's Reddit account. Totally the opposite. I picked up throwing really quickly, but I can't hand build to save my life. Everything is wonky and looks like a third grade art project. LOL. You were really good at debate but couldn't convince your teacher you weren't a special needs student? Opposite for me, but same experience. Really good at art, but not much else in high school. I was a nervous kid and didn't do much HW, so I was called a savant a lot. I also didn't talk a lot, so some people within the community started taking that term literally. People were surprised when I got a job, like I'm not low functioning autistic. I can function in society independently. Some people are up their own asses. This genuinely made me laugh out loud. Thanks for making my evening. I hated my pottery teacher. I can still see her smug face. I actually like pottery and have little clay sculptures around, but she needed the devil slapped out of her. Was contacted by a recruiter and pitched a job opening that fit my description perfectly, as recruiters do. I pushed back and asked to see the exact listing, so I could verify. I questioned a bit on the requirements that stated specific programming knowledge, and was assured multiple times that, while it was on there, it wasn't the primary job function and they don't need a programmer. So, booked the interview, showed up, said hellos, and was thrown at a terminal and asked to write a pile of custom code for something. Had to politely explain that I was assured multiple times by the recruiter that this wasn't a programming position, and was told to just give it a shot anyway since you're already here. Like, you're looking for a programmer and you're so hard up that you'd waste your time interviewing someone who's just told you that they don't program at all? One of the interviewers was their lead programmer, and she was extremely petulant toward me for wasting their time. It was quite the experience. I had a similar experience, though not to quite the same degree. Had a phone interview with the hiring manager for a data analyst role where I was clear that my SQL knowledge was very limited and learned through web development rather than data analysis. Told him I wanted to improve my SQL but wouldn't lie that I was proficient already. Was invited to interview and explained the same to the interviewers. The hiring manager was not one of them. Talked through my skills and experience in my current data analyst role. They said it was fine that I wasn't an SQL expert but wanted me to take their test anyway, just to see where I was at. They said it wouldn't be a major factor, and surprisingly I struggled though was able to make reasonable guesses at mostly correct answers, just not using the proper syntax. Hiring manager comes in to mark the test, talks me through all the things I did wrong and then was just like, okay, let's end it there, bye. There was supposed to be another part to the interview but they just skipped it and escorted me out. It was embarrassing. I totally understand that I might not have been right for the role, but I was honest about my skills and it just felt like such a waste of everyone's time to even interview me if the SQL portion was so important. They could have just said from the very first phone interview that they needed me to have those skills and wouldn't be able to invest the time to get me up to speed. LOL, I didn't elaborate for brevity, but it sounds very similar. I did explain in the interview that I understand programming, but I'm not a coder. If you give me a broken code snippet and 5 minutes on Stack Overflow, I can probably fix it. but I don't have enough syntax memorized to code from scratch on a terminal with no internet access for reference. On the bright side, I did find the recruiter's manager on LinkedIn and let them know it was a major embarrassment for both me and their client, so that was nice. I had this happen but for language. I only speak English, and a common qualification in my job and location is to also speak French. I was very clear the entire process that I was applying as a unilingual and could not qualify for the position as a bilingual. Still got a "well, can you just try to translate this sentence? Just try, like no I don't speak it." Got the job though. In kindergarten we were learning penmanship and my teacher was telling us how to write our alphabet, but for some reason I could not write the letters no matter how hard I tried. Since I was able to write the alphabet before, I got very frustrated and starting crying. Turns out she was showing the class how to do letters with your right hand and I was left-handed. Sinister. Just so people who don't understand can appreciate this comment. Sinister means left-handed in Latin. Dexter is right-handed. Carpe voto dio estate dampnus. Had similar experience when trying to learn how to tie my shoelaces. Every adult who tried to help me eventually gave up and I felt so stupid. Then one day my left-handed uncle showed left-handed me how to do it and I learned it immediately. I had this problem, too. Unfortunately, I didn't have a left-handed family member to help. Instead, I just wore Velcro shoes for a long time until I figured it out on my own. A friend finally actually taught me at 15 or 16. She was right-handed but she really thought through how to teach me each step. Made life so much easier. That's a friend. Oh my god, I'm an idiot. I've been trying to teach my 6-year-old to tie her shoes. I figured it was an issue with fine motor skills because she does have issues with that. But maybe it's because she's left-handed. My left-handed aunt is visiting for Thanksgiving. I'll have to see if she can help my daughter. Edit. Reading all these other comments on what being left-handed can affect, like penmanship. I feel like the worst parent ever for not realizing why my kid has struggled with this shit. I'm going to call a meeting with her teacher to get her in with OT to try to help, and I will do better with her younger sister who is also left-handed. My mum learned how to tie shoes left-handed just to teach me. God, she's great. I can't write worth shit. My penmanship is horrible and my left hand is worse. I am seriously right-handed. This got me labeled learning disabled in school and I was doing kindergarten writing assignments in middle school. My standardized math test scores were off the charts. In 7th grade I missed 1 out of 100 questions. My reading test scores were high as well. Yet the school thought I had to trace capital letters on paper ruled 4 times bigger than wide ruled. I always tell my left-handed SO that it's a sick and twisted lifestyle choice that you people are pushing on America S. Just in case. And we laugh and laugh and laugh and I sleep on the couch that night. Same. I remember we were told to write towards your hand. There's scraps of paper with me writing backwards because of it. I think I wrote something on the back of one of my mom's hanging portraits, so it might still be around. I think some other adults that was a teacher's aide caught me doing it wrong. They tried to make me switch to being right-handed, but I was unconsciously stubborn, because it just made more natural sense to use my left than right, to write. When HR at a company had me interview for a different position than I had applied for, the position they interviewed me for was one I knew nothing about, and told them as much. Despite me telling them before each round of interviews that they had made a mistake, I still had to endure a full day of people asking me questions that I had no answer to. Oof. Sounds like you dodged a bullet though if HR was that incompetent. Plot twist. He got the job. I'm literally not the right person for the job and you shouldn't hire me. He's so honest and insightful. Hire him ASAP. They asked me how well I understood theoretical physics. I said I had a theoretical degree in physics. They said welcome aboard. But that's just not good enough for some assholes. Yeah, he also needs at least 4 years of theoretical work experience. Promote him for his transparency. Transparency moldability. Plot twist. It's a sales position. Man, if interviewers actually rewarded honesty, I'd never have trouble getting a job. I suck at lying in interviews. They had someone in mind but needed to interview someone objectively worse than their preferred person so it didn't look like favoritism. I hadn't considered that angle. However, they flew me in, picked me up in a black car, put me up in a nice hotel. Would be a hell of a play if true. You would seriously be surprised how much money a company will pay a recruitment agency for candidates, in particular in the senior or above levels in IT. Sick money. Can confirm. Once hired for a senior developer position with a $50,000 bounty. I was fresh out of school and managed to find the guy on my own as part of a small 3-man company, beating out a bunch of large recruitment agencies. I was pretty proud of that. I had initially read this as was once hired and it made far less sense than it does now. Well, HR doesn't need to worry about the amount of money spent, but they do need to worry about making sure they used the allocated budget to do what they said they did. They would be in bigger trouble if someone found out they claimed to do an interview session, but with no records on the books. HR person. Well, their department gave us $15K to find a replacement. I owe my friend a favor, so I'm gonna make sure he gets hired and I guess someone else gets a nice one-day vacation. Had this happen as a software developer. Told them I didn't work in Ruby on Rails and applied for a JavaScript position. Since finding Rails developers is so hard, they then proceeded to interview me with only Rails questions and were Pikachu shock-faced when I couldn't answer them very accurately and didn't give me the job offer. My university interview went like that. The interviewer asked a lot of probing questions about Dungeons and Dragons, which I didn't know much about but tried to answer as honestly as I could. Eventually he said I didn't seem very clear on how it worked. No, it's not something I've ever tried, I said quite honestly. You listed it as a hobby on your application, he said. I said I did not. He shuffled some papers around and apologized for his mistake, and that was that. I got in and had a lovely 3 years. He was a terrible professor though. I had a job that did something similar, except I was interviewed and hired for one job, but when I started I was actually given, to me, a much less desirable job that was out of my field of expertise. I left during training. I was always told how bad sleeping in class was despite acing my classes, and teachers would complain to my parents about how much I slept. I felt so horrible for so long and slept early almost every day to no avail. Turns out I have narcolepsy. So, were you micro-napping or out for the whole lesson? Hope you are now supported in managing this. I would fall asleep for between 5-60 minutes. Don't know what it depends on, but it's random. During that time, I'd have vivid dreams and multiple dreams, even if I was out for only 10 minutes. Even now I still fall asleep in every class. I don't manage it in any way other than resisting and taking some medication, which helps sometimes. I knew a man when I was younger who had extremely bad narcolepsy. Medication helped, but only so much. He got basically a hearing aid that would shriek if his head dipped below a certain level. Prior to that he would fall asleep in the middle of conversing with people, which was very awkward since he was a priest. And yes, I saw him fall asleep multiple times during service. I wonder if that's still a therapy, and if it's an option for you. I've always wondered if I have narcolepsy. Sometimes I don't even notice how I started sleeping, and it's common to feel my eyes shutting down all of a sudden and having to stop what I'm doing to take a 10-30 minute nap. I'm known at work and among friends as the guy who just sleeps unnoticed. People often see it as just a quirky thing, but there's no way I would drive a car for more than an hour, for example. You most likely do. You should get a sleep study. I'm known as a sleepyhead to my friends, and probably just as someone who doesn't put effort to some of my teachers. It's always good to get checked up. Same, except it turned out I have hypothyroidism. Playing sports growing up, I would make these comically bad errors. The ball would hit me directly in the face, or I would swing at a pitch with too late. Everyone gave me shit, even the coaches and parents. I kept playing because I enjoyed being active and around my friends, but I never understood why no matter how much I practiced I struggled with basic things that everyone else could do without thinking. I go to the eye doctor as an adult, and he tells me that I have a condition in one of my eyes that means I don't have binocular vision and as a result have very poor depth perception. It's physically impossible for me to track a moving object in space like everyone else. I know the pain, mate. Was forced to play volleyball in high school even though I obviously couldn't follow the ball. I was once looking right at it but couldn't spot it, and it hit me right in the face. Turns out I have a retinitis pigmentosa, which not only means I can't follow objects, but I can't see at night. My peripheral vision sucks, and anything that requires precision movement is out of the question. Thankfully I'm great in other fields that do not require good eye coordination. Can you drive? Unfortunately, no. I'm afraid I'm not able to drive, and probably never will. Thankfully I live in a small place where I can get to anywhere on foot or with a bus, and also taxis are pretty cheap here. Hey, same here. My dad tried so hard to get me into sports as a kid and I absolutely sucked shit at all of them. Turns out I have 20/250 vision in one eye, so unless things are less than 3 feet from my face I'm only seeing them with one eye. I somehow didn't realize that wasn't normal until halfway through high school, cause when it comes to common fucking sense I'm truly dumb as a rock pea. What was really cool was walking outside after I picked up my glasses. It's hard to describe, but I was seeing the exact same image I had seen before, but I was perceiving it totally differently now that I could see depth. I was so disoriented I fell over trying to walk to the Uber Mayo. Equals my life. I knew as a kid I didn't have depth perception but didn't really know what that meant in practice. In middle school I was subbed in to take a penalty shot in field hockey. Ball was sitting still on the ground. I swung at the ball 3 times and missed each time. The coach subbed me out shaking her head and subbed someone else in to take the shot. Humiliating. I had no idea why I couldn't hit it. It was only about 2 decades later that I was thinking about this incident. BC, my son was starting Little League, hitting balls with sticks, and I stopped and went on. I did play volleyball and was quite good at it, went on to play in college as an outside hitter. I seem to have developed some kinesthetic sense when my hand contacts a ball, not a stick. I was really mad in high school when my dad said to me, "I don't understand how you can even hit the ball." I had no idea what he was talking about. I was so mad. It was only about 2 decades later that I was thinking about this incident and I stopped and went on. I haven't played volleyball for 25 years and stepped onto a court with my daughter this spring and just about got hit in the face. Lost every bit of kinesthetic judgment I had built up. On the bright side, those of us that can't see 3D tend to be far better than others at building spatial models in our heads, I guess, to help us navigate the world. I'll bet your geospatial reasoning, math skills, ability to solve physical object engineering problems is pretty darn good. Maybe for some it won't be a situation like the Einstein quote, but I felt like a fish trying to climb a tree. A few months ago I got the chance for an interview for an okay job. I finished all tests with almost 100% and finished the first 2 interviews quite good, and when I got to the last one they started asking me questions that had nothing to do with my profession. I was completely silent because it has nothing to do with what I studied. I think that I even looked like a fish gasping for water. After they started to make fun of me, I just walked out. Dodge a bullet there. Not a bullet. Chernobyl itself. Millions of tiny bullets hitting you at the cellular level. What kind of arsehole do you have to be to make fun of someone at a job interview? Eesh. One of my first interviews I did really terribly at. I had no idea how to give the kind of answers they expected. Partway through the guy told me he wasn't going to give me a job, but he took the time to explain what sort of thing I should be saying. If an interviewer asks X they are hoping to hear Y, etc. Always really appreciated that. They might have been testing how you cope with the unexpected. I thought about that, but in the end they expected more work and knowledge for the minimum salary they offered. Nobody before me accepted their offer and I was the last one to be okay with it, but didn't have the extra knowledge they were looking for. They didn't mention it anywhere, not even in the initial job offer. Too many red flags. They started making fun of you during a formal interview? A formal interview that you had to take time out of your day, not including the 2 previous interviews first. That's majorly fucked up. I'm sorry they put you through that. Yeah, thanks. I took an extra day off for them and I'm quite happy I didn't stay just for the sake of it. I've had the same thing happen to me, and I ended things early too. It's surprising how many interviewers are rude to candidates. I worked at a Van shoe store about a decade ago, and they asked wacky questions during an interview. Stupid things like, if you could have dinner with any celebrity, who would it be and what type of cloud would you like to be? I got the job and worked there for the summer. I tried to transfer to another location and they seriously asked me how many bubbles are in a bar of soap. I did not even get a call back after that interview. Was it like to see how quirky or hipster you were? Genuinely confused about those questions. I guess it was to gauge my personality. That last question though, about how many bubbles in a bar of soap, was specifically used to prevent black people from voting in the United States during the Jim Crow era. I'm not black. and I doubt the 19-year-old stoner who interviewed me knew the context of the question he was asking. But yeah, I was taken aback. Had an English teacher that said any stories I wrote were bad. I thought that I'd done a good job on it, so I showed it to a different English teacher who said it was brilliant but I needed to spell check it. Turns out the first teacher basically didn't read it, just saw the spelling errors. Several years later I got diagnosed with dyslexia. This reminds me of the time my class had to write down what we wanted to be. I told my 7th grade science teacher I wanted to be a writer, but I wrote it on an index card. When she saw the index card she saw my terrible handwriting and immediately looked directly at me and said some of us should reconsider what we want to be. Needless to say, I've been excelling at basically every writing assignment ever. I wrote for my high school and college newspaper, and some even got awards. In fact, I got so many writing achievements with these that I still laugh about how she judged my writing's worth on the handwriting instead of the actual content. You could have told her about this recent new invention, the typewriter. A similar thing happened to me. I could read perfectly well but I just couldn't write. I couldn't make the letters nice and neat and my writing was illegible. Turns out I have dysgraphia and a tremor, neither of which was diagnosed until I was 12. All my teachers acted like I was an idiot and marked me down in all my tests because they couldn't understand what I was saying. One of them even told my mum I should be held back and put in a remedial class. Fuck him. The moment I got computer use and extra time my grades shot up. I'm at uni now so I like to think about them and laugh. Also feel bad about 8-year-old me who felt so dumb and confused. I used to play a lot of poker on my phone but never with real people. At one point I was up well over $1 million. One day I went to a convention and there was a charity poker game. Since a lot of time on the phone the computer gives you your options and so on. I was excruciatingly awkward and came across as a bumbling idiot who didn't know what he was doing. This wasn't intentional but it did work in my favor. I won a nice tablet that night. I was the fish trying, and failing, to climb the tree, and my boss called to offer me a position swimming. That time my boss called me to tell me I sucked at my job, but followed it up by telling me I got crazy good comments about this one small part of my job. So would I like to do that full time? Did the new thing for 6 years and used it to land another, even better, position at the same company. Thanks for recognizing my talents, old boss. You were a bit of a shit boss, but when it mattered you really were a help. Edit. Since so many are asking, here's actual detail. Moved from software implementation, which had a bit of a teaching component to it, to formally teaching how to use the software. Have since moved into writing the content that is taught. How? Shitting on and appreciating your boss. It was really a win-win situation. He got me off his team and I got to do something I didn't dread and was actually pretty good at. He was still a crap boss the rest of the time. Similar thing happened to me when I was in big ticket sales. I was very knowledgeable about the products, but only sold people what they needed, not what was best for the department. I had a knack for reading spreadsheets and intuition for why numbers didn't add up. I regularly found and fixed paperwork errors and saved thousands in internal loss. So my boss asked me if I wanted to switch to salary and focus on that. I overhauled the entire inventory system and loved it. Maybe he was a fellow fish trying to climb a tree and wanted to give you an out. This is a solid one. That's weird that someone would silver you saying that the story was good instead of the good story itself. Not saying that's bad, but I mean, weird. Wish my former boss was like this. She was more the type of person to get angry that I couldn't climb the tree, but if I asked for water, she'd say something equivalent to there's enough water in the grass. Now, climb. That's probably the reason he was a boss. Finding other strengths and putting people into the right positions to make everything more productive is a great skill to have for someone in charge. I am very dyslexic. It results in me having the spelling and grammar of a middle schooler. Plus it makes me have trouble hearing similar sounding words. Letters and phonic sounds don't always connect to the idea they represent in my head. I listen to the overall idea and not the individual letters. As a result, school was a very mixed bag. I had to be very hard working to compensate for the disability. I became very good at working with people. I learned to plan ahead because I can't do things last minute, and developed a strong logic skill set. The problem is that many teachers thought I was lazy because I would describe what I thought while the other person wrote it down, etc. In college the department head of chemistry is the teacher that fully understand who I am as an academic student. He thought it was hilarious that I had the highest lab grade while the low end of the class portion. Apparently it caused heated discussions as to why the only non-pre-med was doing so much better than the pre-med students in laboratories classes. I think he was the only teacher that appreciated that I was good at working with people and terrible at writing papers for classes. Plus it makes me have trouble hearing similar sounding words. I also struggle with that, and didn't realize it could be related. I was diagnosed as gifted at age 7, but they didn't diagnose any of my learning disabilities, which I am only starting to understand now. 30 years later, I wasn't too surprised to be told that I had ADHD, because I had already developed a lot of ways to deal with it, like setting at least 7 alarms to remind me to get out the door on time with everything done. But despite having increasing difficulty in reading, writing, and processing audio, none of my doctors gaff. I often have to ask people to repeat what they said, because the words I heard didn't make sense, so I know I heard wrong. Watching TV with subtitles on often helps, but I can get too focused on that, and miss out on visual things happening on screen. I've always had problems with that too. I was recently diagnosed with auditory processing disorder, at the age of 32. It explains why I always felt the need to have subtitles on the TV. If you check the guest customer service desk of most updated modern theaters, they have special glasses you can wear that are coded to the movie you're seeing, and it pops up tiny personalized subtitles for you in the lenses. Oh my fucking god, really? Thank you, that'll help me a shit ton. Yep. A friend of mine uses them at our local Regal cinemas because she has prosopagnosia. She doesn't recognize people's faces. Subtitles help a ton figuring out who's talking and helping her keep up with the story. She's also half deaf in one ear, so I'm sure it helps there too. LOL. Good subtitles are amazing. But I was watching My Name is Dolomite on Netflix last night and the subtitles were terrible. ADHD can also contribute to auditory processing. You're listening to the words, you can hear them being spoken, but your brain is distracted by a billion other things at once and just doesn't process the words you hear into the correct signals in your brain. The easiest way to describe it before you understand what's actually going on, or have the words to describe it, is sorry, I didn't hear you. You heard, you didn't process. Happens to me all the time, and I don't have any kind of dyslexia or other hearing difficulties, though I do have trouble holding visualizing numbers. I mostly judge myself. My whole life I pressured myself to be just as smart as my dad and brother who were phenomenal in math and engineering. My dad has an IQ of 138 and my brother always had A's and made the dean's list in post-secondary. The institution gave out entire cakes to those on the dean's list. I struggled so hard in math. I tried so hard, exponentially more than any other kid because I felt like if I didn't get good at math, or any subject for that matter, then I wasn't smart. Always a C+B student. Because I wasn't good at something, I very much lived years feeling I was stupid. Then as I grew older I realized that my skills in art were actually worth something. My art teachers were always very impressed. Soon it progressed to people making me offers. The school's police officer even had me make him something. I had some artwork displayed at the city's airport, and when I expressed to my dad that I felt like there were no jobs for me on my degree, he said to try something else. I asked what and he said art, which I thought was a little funny for the starving artist stereotype. In that moment, it felt like he equated my artistic skills to his intelligence and success. I'm really glad to hear you came full circle and found something to be proud of. I hope you recognize that it is a mark of your intelligence that you had this epiphany. You're not the art kid while your brother is the smart kid, but instead you're the smart kid who struggled in academics and found success in art, while your brother succeeded in academics and never really pursued art. I'm sure if you took an IQ test you wouldn't perform badly on it. A lot of super smart people just aren't good at math. Edit. Also, people like to talk about multiple intelligences, but the reality is that cognitive abilities share pathways in the brain. It's likely that to a large extent whatever is making him good at math is making you good at art, and that there are actually just as many similarities as there are differences. In terms of raw cognitive power, this was basically my childhood, because I was bad at math. I guess most children go through this, which is very sad. Only at uni did I realize that I didn't have to be good at everything. I had a professor who spoke 13 languages, but couldn't count how much 5 plus 4 is. He's the best at his field. Ironically, once you get to college, all the math professors have forgotten how to do simple math as well. I remember all of us checking like super basic math they are doing on the whiteboard cause they'd fuck it up 1 times in 4 but were completing these insane proofs. I get this even as a higher level math tutor. Give me anything beside basic math and I can help you out almost without thinking. Helping my 2nd grade niece with her math homework, I'm counting on my fingers like she is. Student of applied mathematics here. I feel your pain. Simple integers are usually n, k. I was once reading a proof a friend wrote late at night and I came over to him halfway through and said, dude, you must be exhausted. Some of your epsilons, Greek letter epsilon, are written backwards. He explained to me that some fields of mathematics have this concept called the number 3. Mate of mine wrote his elements, like epsilons, before I started bullying him about it xd. That's actually what the symbol was originally. If you read some older math, 1700s, if I recall correctly, really advanced math does weird things to the human brain. I have a degree in engineering. I can do triple integrals, differential equations, etc. But I still need my calculator to do simple addition and subtraction. Triple integrals? Fuck, I've only done 2 so far. Haha, don't worry, they're basically the same as double integrals but just with 1 more variable. Until you have to convert from Cartesian to cylindrical or spherical. I've seen a NASA engineer tweet a few days ago how he had to look up the formula for the volume of a sphere. This gives me hope. I'm 6 feet 6 inches, and I suck at basketball. Should have been 6 feet 7 inches. Better luck next life. Yeah, you'd have a girl who looks good and you'd call her. And maybe have a rabbit in a hat with a bat and a 1964 Impala. 6 feet 1 inches woman and have tried various sports time and time again, but I'd just much rather talk shit out than angrily throw balls at people. When people ask if I play sports, they are visibly shook that I never really took to anything. Edit. Yes, I could have been a contender lol, but being a super tall teenage girl isn't fun, so I tried to not stand out and thus shied away from things. That is sports. That would draw attention to me. Adult me regrets it, but that's life. Edit 2. You all coming at me with semantics. I'm a noob, but I get that angrily throwing balls is not how sports work. 'Twas a joke. I mean, I definitely understand why they are visibly shook. Such a big part of elite air athletics is genetics based, so to have a genetic advantage like that for something like basketball, volleyball, etc. and then not utilize the thing other people are dreaming of, totally get it. I'm 6 feet 3 inches, and as a basketball player I would kill for another 4 to 5 inches of height. It would have changed my whole life. I'm about to end this man's whole career. Genetics. Not me, but my brother. When he was in elementary school, when grades are based on things other than test scores, the teacher noted on his report card that he needs to work on his skill of cutting with scissors. My brother is left-handed, and the scissors in the classroom were for right-handed people. When I was in the Navy I used to get in fairly frequent trouble for the suggestions I made for improving operational efficiencies. As an outside contractor they were quite happy to pay me $200 an hour to say the exact same thing. Personal change must come from within. Organizational change must come from without. Loose change must come from the pocket. And pocket change must come from someone else's. Need a change come in someone else's pocket. There is a change room down the hall. Second door on the right. I know. That's where all the pockets with someone else's loose change are. I killed a squirrel today. I am that squirrel. The Fortune 500 company I freelance with would prefer to use an outside vendor for a project, thinking they would do a better job since that's all they do. That vendor then hires me at my same rate, meaning the original company is just paying more for me to do the work I could have done internally. Moral of the story, if you charge more, people will think you're worth more. A $6 bottle of wine may be better than a $45 bottle, but most people will say the $45 bottle must be better because why else would it be $45? That reminds me of this one thing I saw where someone started selling their art. but they had low prices in the hopes people would be willing to buy since it wouldn't cost much. They were struggling to make sales and looking for advice, and someone said to raise the prices for the same pieces from like $10 to $50, and it actually worked. Human psychology is nuts. Using the price tag as a statement of quality, it works for Apple, it works for Gucci, and it can work for you. Or, to put it another way, people intuitively know how much things should cost. That is the market clearing price of the item. If something costs less than it should cost, and there's no big sticker saying sale or something, then people assume there must be something wrong with the thing. It's just like how, when a stock tanks, that's an information signal that there's something wrong with a company, but applied to retail. I was getting rid of an old mattress, put it on a Facebook selling page for free and no one replied. Then I changed it to £5 and it went. They even paid us an extra $5 to deliver it. It was not in great condition as well. Yes, this works. Put it online for free and people think it's shit. Put a price on it and people might haggle you down, but all of a sudden it's desirable. On the other hand, I do not understand anyone that buys a second-hand mattress. Alternatively, the bottle that costs $45 at the restaurant may very well cost $6 retail, and not be worth much more. I learned in an IO Psych class that hiring someone outside the company is important. Nobody listens to the guy they've known for years. He's just Bill or Sue, ranting about how it should be. What do they know? But if someone from outside comes, says the same thing with different words, but they also have that X factor, those credentials, it's much easier to listen. This is absolutely true in the hair industry. Some salons charge $10 for a haircut while others can charge up to $600 for a haircut. My mom was only charging $25 and was getting overloaded with work, and I convinced her to start charging $35 or more. But she charges a lot for color because she knows she's so skilled with it, so she can charge over $200 for a color job that other salons charge $70. She could probably increase it more if she wanted. But you have hairstylists who make minimum wage, and then you have hairstylists charging ridiculous prices of $500 or more per hour. I read an article about a guy who makes more than $1 million a year waxing people's eyebrows. I used to work for a business that was owned by a guy who basically never set foot in the building. I had so many suggestions for making things better, more efficient, etc. And I was shot down every single time. This is how we've done it for the last 20 years. I hate that. My boss is a micromanager who was good at my job 30 years ago. He doesn't realize that the business has changed, and insists that I do everything exactly the way he wants. Every time I suggest that I want to do something differently, he just hits me with "I've been doing this for a lot of years," and refuses to listen. So frustrating. Ugh. It was even stuff that's really little, like, "Oh, we should get a second broom and dustpan so we can clean up quicker after closing," or "we should put a label on this shelf so people will stop putting things on it that don't go there," and I'd still be shot down for no reason. I typically work around that by just doing it. Better to ask forgiveness than permission is a surprisingly effective strategy, even when it feels really scary to do. My job involves consulting with partners on operations and efficiencies. This type of executive owner-manager is the first example we use of how not to be during the process. Basically, we tell them that if you've been doing this for X years and it works, then we wouldn't need to be there. You have to be a high rank to get anything changed. At every base I went to, I find some little job that would get me frequent FaceTime with the commander. Then whenever I or anyone had an idea, I would bring it up as part of casual conversation. Most of the time making it a question as if my idea was wrong and how could I make it better. I called this putting a bug in the ear. Typically it wouldn't get much response, just a nice conversation while working. Yet sure enough, without fail, a couple weeks later the changes would be made. It would all be the commander's idea. I was at one base so long, others became aware when I would discuss changes in the lunchroom. Then they magically become the commander's idea, so they would use me as a way to get shit done. Funny thing, I was taught how to do this by an old commander. "Hey, can you hire me, Army?" Same situation, lol. I was teased a lot in middle school, early high school for loving hockey, would constantly get my knowledge tested, my appearance would get brought into it. Why would a fat girl like hockey? Had someone ask me if it was my passion and laugh in my face when I said yes. Jokes on them. I'm an officially credentialed journalist by the NHL now and have personally spoken to more players than they could dream of buying autographs from. Now you can tell your former critics to go to HE hockey sticks. That's so awesome. Way to go, make your dreams a reality. Do you work for the league or a particular team? Thank you so much. I work for an independent weekly publication that I edit and write for. I cover primarily Devils, but I recently covered the global series game between the Lightning and Sabres in Stockholm and it was fantastic. When I get introduced to a new person, but I'm not part of the conversation, I just sit and wait. Then I get told, oh, you're really quiet. No, I just didn't want to interrupt. But, do the people who say that even have empathy? They're commenting on the one thing the other person doesn't want comments on. What do they expect to happen? You to become an instant party animal. What annoys me the most is people who say that never do anything to include you in the conversation. I've had multiple people tell me I'm quiet, but then never speak to me. If I'm at a party or something and I notice someone being quiet, I address them specifically or ask their opinion on something. I know some people don't like being put on the spot like that, but at least I'm trying to include them. Some people have to turn every conversation into a competition with winners and losers. It's exhausting. Exactly. Social skill is basically a measure of how well you can kindle a conversation with other people. People who perceive others as not having social skills, like them, are usually the ones who don't have social skills. People who perceive themselves as shy or as not having social skills, usually interact mostly with people who don't have social skills, and then blame themselves for the results. They might be perfectly good at having great conversations with most people on Earth, but if none of the people they regularly interact with ever give them an opportunity to talk, they won't know it. The first part of your comment on my fiancé sisters to a T, they've complained so much to him about how I don't want to talk to them. Even though I've wished them happy birthday holidays and congratulated one of them when she graduated from something and congratulated another when she got engaged, yet they didn't start reaching out until after my fiancé begged them to. But yeah, it's all my fault that we don't speak because for some reason it's my sole responsibility to have a correspondence going between us. Face with rolling eyes. When I was younger I always appreciated the person that took time to speak to me. I hated going to parties and only knowing the person that asked me to go. Lucky for me this is something I grew out of and learned how to just involve myself in social situations. This isn't easy for a lot of people, so when I find myself in social situations I try to involve the quiet people to an extent. Oh yes, when I went to high school and we had a meeting the summer before the whole class met, there was a guy who nobody talked to. I talked to him. It's been just a few months, but he's the closest to me in the class. I'm a quiet person, and I get that a lot. Usually I just get quieter instead of joining the conversation because I'm suddenly very aware of myself. Had a review at work the other day with a new manager and he was like, your performance is excellent. Your colleagues are always positive about you. The only thing I would say is that you're a bit quiet sometimes. I wouldn't say I'm quiet at all. I join in on conversations and put forward my opinion when necessary. I just don't engage in endless idle chatter with every person I come across at work. Also in the same conversation he was moaning about someone else being too loud and chatty, so I'm not really sure what he wants. I got this too. We all have our meetings through Skype. My local boss is everyone's big boss, so I went direct to him to ask permission first, and he thought the idea was hilarious. Before I could not get a word in edgewise because certain people would consistently talk and jump in and continue to talk all the time so that no one else can put in their opinions until the subject has changed. Now if I have anything to say, I am the only one that has noticed the mute all other people button. I literally just click it to shut everyone the fuck up to listen to me. If you're busy talking and you don't hear me, that's okay, everyone else is hearing me. Instantly my ideas were being heard a bit more in meetings, and now people actually stop to ask for my opinion or commentary. I'm much the same way. My go-to response is, I didn't feel like I had anything important to say. Nods with understanding. I can see why you'd think that. USMC judges you on your ability to run, no matter how good or bad you are at anything. If you can run fast, you are presumed better at everything. It overcomes crimes, mental retardation, and absolute stupidity. That's how the army is. When I first came in, my push-ups and sit-ups sucked ass and I borderline failed my PT tests. But when my drill sergeants and chain of command saw my 12-10 2-mile run time, my dad has trained me to be a distance runner since I was a little kid. They all left me alone, and once I started putting on muscle in addition to the run time, I was able to get away with so much shit and get out of so many details. It's easier to add strength than it is to add endurance and conditioning to a young man. Also, a soldier who can run for hours has a longer lifespan than one who can do 100 sit-ups. You're not wrong. Stamina and mental fortitude are the makings of a solid soldier. Unless someone is shooting at you in half-second intervals with a gun that can't move and has a magazine with 99 rounds and your legs are trapped under a dresser drawer, so the only thing you can do to dodge bullets is sit-ups. I mean, half the boots in BCT failed their first PT test. The only one that matters is the last test, and by then you should have no problem passing. Given the PT you should have been doing all cycle. Yeah, that's dumb. I don't see how that correlates with your ability to eat crayons. The fastest Marine gets his pick of the crayon box. Macaroni and cheese was always my favorite tasting crayon. Pro tip: eating the red one with the yellow one tastes exactly like the white one with the purple one. Rose-up crayons were drier than Crayola. It was good for a beef jerky type snack when the Crayola weren't available, which were like a properly cooked ribby. I also used to have permanent marker smell pairings for each crayon. 10th grade was a hoot. Goddamn Lomfeo. Did you have rainbow poops? My 3-year would love that. The early Marine gets the crayon is going in my list of idioms now. That's cause if you're a Marine, you have a lot of retreating and escaping to do, getting out of the way of Army or Navy shelling. See, Air Force don't have to worry about that. They're 250 miles back in their air-conditioned shipping containers, indicating they're the only smart ones in the group. I mean, look at who's on the front lines and who's 250 miles back in an air-conditioned shopping container. Are they wrong? When working on oil drilling rigs, we used to call the guys in the geo shacks, looking at spreadsheets on computers, getting paid 24H day, MWDs, movie watching dummies. We were all secretly jealous as fuck. How do I get that job? Start with a degree in geology, I believe, and then hop in a time machine back to an oil boom. It's been a lot slower for the last half decade at least. Masters at least in geology. A BS degree won't do it. Based on the availability of the job, I'd say this is accurate. I knew of geo guys without masters, but a decade ago. This is a thing in construction too. Once I became an office jockey, they all gave me shit thinking I sat around watching YouTube all day. To be fair, the guys in the geoshacks frequently did exactly that. A huge portion of them were into sports betting and day trading, because beyond some testing of rock samples there isn't much to do, but they're still mandatory on site. Of course there's a Terminal Lance comic about it, https://terminalant.com/26/07/terminal-lance-214-meritorious/ The time my middle school art teacher called my parents because she thought I was purposefully mocking her by making my art bad. I literally can't draw beyond a 3rd grade level unless I am copying an object right in front me. My parents basically cussed her out after they saw how hurt I was. Has she really experienced such vindictive kids? Yeah, she raised them herself. https://wikipedia.org Wiki list of burn centers in the United States. Been missing this classic. Random story about my middle school teachers. Middle school teacher accused me of eating the Twizzlers on her desk. I didn't. Called me out in front of the whole class. Made it a big thing. And gave me detention. In 6th grade I was the heavy kid. Only one in a class of 25. I was super self-conscious about my weight in middle school and felt like shit. My mom was really good friends with my teacher. After school she was called about my detention and came to the class, looked at me and asked about the Twizzlers. I told her it wasn't me. My mom knew when I was lying and immediately knew I was telling the truth. Mom powers. Went up to bat for me. Weaned her friend and said she better have proof the next time she embarrasses a kid with nothing else than a hunch. I've never seen my mom literally flip a switch and go from good friend to mama bear in a split second. Felt so much love and respect for her believing me. I never forgot that feeling of just being believed by someone. I want to be that for my nephews, nieces, and someday my own kids. You don't forget something like that. Same. My K-4th grade teachers all told me I couldn't draw well and even lowered my other grades because I couldn't draw, and there was an art component to every subject like science class where I was given a low grade because my fish and fish scales weren't good enough even though the information about fish was. It was ridiculous. I hated school. I thought I was dumb and would never really get anywhere. It wasn't until 5th grade where I had a first-time teacher that told me I suck at art too. It's okay. That doesn't mean you can't be good at other things that I started getting as in everything, and honestly I started to like school because of him. Even before my first report card with him as a teacher, I actually started feeling confident in class regardless of if a subject was my strong point. Edit. If anybody knows how to contact a teacher that moved schools, is not originally from this province, I don't know their first name, and their last name is spelled one of two ways, please let me know. I would like to thank him because my life would not be nearly as good if he didn't cure my hatred of education. What psycho school is that? Do they think all of us are born with artistic talent, and incorporate art into science then punish you with bad grades because your art is bad? Right? They had me feeling like I was legitimately just stupid because I couldn't draw. All I heard at school was get good grades for a future, and all I saw was you can't draw so you can't get good grades, and that was very intimidating for me as a child. Just the thought of drawing and coloring scared the hell out of me, which made me even worse than I was. Weird. On my school we also had to draw things for other subjects, but if the thing was mildly recognizable and the info was okay, we got an A. Another mimic. I was always better at copying others' art than drawing something original. Same here. I can copy something almost perfectly if it's right in front of me. Goes for other people's signatures too. Want me to draw a tree from imagination? Yeah, you're gonna get a stick figure that looks like it has dreads. That sounds interesting. Could you provide a visual example of the dread stick? We want the dread stick, we want the dread stick. I once copied my hand. Just looking at it, it was fucking beautiful, if I may say so myself. If I just have to draw a hand, it looks like it belongs on a snowman. It's why I admire artists so much. I've had years of art classes, and unless I can copy something, there's just no way. When I was in social studies in 7th grade, the teacher wanted an outline of the continents on a large piece of paper she was going to laminate and use as a teaching tool for geography. She asked a few artists to do it, and they did alright, but they left out a few important details like the Canadian bases, Svalbard, Madagascar, New Zealand, etc. I volunteered to do it in a free period the next day and she just sighed and agreed because how much worse could it get? I had her cast a proper projection through the projector and got to drawing. 15 minutes later, the continents were done and another 10 meant the islands and smaller details were done. 15 years later, she's still using it. This reminds me of the time I asked my teacher which of these is blue, and which is purple because I'm red-green colorblind, so certain shades of purple are hard for me to differentiate. She just kept saying why don't you tell me, and didn't believe I was colorblind. Hey, you're doing computer science, right? Can you fix my PC? My computer science degree did not train me to fix computers. I am just better at Google than my relatives. Less lazy. Using Google isn't rocket science. The number of times I've had somebody ask me a question, just to type it out exactly as they asked it in front of them in Google, to get a quick, correct answer without having even to navigate away, is insane. It's not laziness, it's fear. Most people in my experience don't really know how a computer works, so they can't tell whether they are doing something dangerous. That means they tend to stick on the safe side and not do anything. And even if they do know that they need to use Google, the result might send them to a website they've never used before. And if they haven't made an intuitive model of how forums look, they won't click anything on Stack Overflow for fear of getting a virus. I'd say tech people also underestimate how deep the Googling rabbit hole goes when you don't have any background familiarity with the problem at hand. When all steps to solving a problem involve Googling other things you don't know about, it gets overwhelming quickly. That's true. Even if you do find what tech people would consider an answer, you might not be able to make any sense of it. As a tech person, we do understand. We've been down that rabbit hole many times. Usually you manage to fix it eventually, and even if you don't, you'll learn a shitload about how your computer works in the process. Hell, I spent nearly the entire last workday figuring out how to create and email HTML reports using PowerShell. Literally a 6-hour tech black hole, but I learned a ton of tricks that will be useful for solving future problems. The issue is that they, ultimately, don't have the context to discern which of those results is good, and which is trash. So they've, in many cases, learned that they can ask the right questions, but get the wrong answer back. Like, why does it matter that these results are for a different version of Word, while it doesn't matter that these are for OS X while I'm using Windows? But sometimes it's the opposite. They're variously uneducated in computer operations, or in many cases, actively discouraged, punished or shamed away from trying by the people who have to fix the mistakes they invariably make. More like, can you fix my printer? It doesn't want to print anything. Wonder how long it will take for people to understand that printers are pure black magic and have nothing to do with CS. There are few things that will trigger an angry outburst from me, but man, fuck printers. How in a world where we have VR, voice-activated virtual assistants in our houses and folding phones has nobody looked at a printer and come up with a better solution? They've been shit for 40 years. I work in IT and my experience is that those crazy Xerox printers that are the size of your car and a couple of models of HP from like 5 years ago are reliable. That's about it. If you want a more serious answer, I think the podcast reply all did a deep dive into why printers are shit. All my wife's friends and my family think because I work in IT as a programmer, that I have nothing better to do than provide free technical support for their laptop, television, smartphone, Alexa etc. No, I will not fix your slow busted computer that's a decade old. Buy a new computer. Turn it off and on again. Didn't work. Turn it off and unplug it. Then what? Give me $500 and I'll send you a new computer. iPad probably would be better from the sounds of it. Most of my co-workers' problems are solved by restarting their computers because they have a ton of updates that need to install. They bitch their computers are slow and I'm like, okay, when is the last time you restarted? They don't want to restart because it takes too long. Turn off the fucking computer when you leave every day and don't bother me with stupid shit. One of the funniest conversations I overheard. A few years ago the company had hired an outside agency to build a new website, and everyone liked it until the C-level execs looked at it. They complained that it was ugly and didn't work right. One of the agency managers asked to see what they were seeing on their screen. Oh, I see the problem. You're still using Internet Explorer 6. We can fix that. It should only take a couple of days. We'll just have some new laptops delivered for you. Couldn't you just fix the website? We could, but that would be a lot more expensive and take a couple of months. I have the opposite of that where I work. Oh, you're a computer scientist? Programming isn't too difficult. I took like one programming course for my degree and it was easy. And surprisingly there is a lot of terribly written code that doesn't follow any sort of architecture, is horribly inefficient, and is a nightmare to maintain. But hey, that kind of mentality is why I have a job, so I guess I can't complain. People just don't realize that computer science is more than just coding. It's learning how to structure things to adapt to change. It's identifying efficient algorithms to accomplish a task and how to prove that they will work. It's understanding the mechanics of the computer to optimize logic paths. XKCD, tech support cheat sheet, https://xkcd.com/627/ I only expressed interest in a few things when I was a kid. Cooking, making games. My parents told me they were bad careers and made me play soccer and do scouts and other things I hated. I was terrible academically all the way through the end of college, where I studied management, because these things I was told I was supposed to be doing were of zero interest to me. A few years out I taught myself to code, and now I spend my life making games and cooking for friends, and I'm fucking great at it. That quote has always rung true for me, but on top of that I really feel this: adults, stop telling kids what they should be interested in. If a kid is interested in something you don't get, when they are an adult it's highly likely that this thing will be a marketplace with hundreds of millions of consumers and will absolutely be a career. If they were involved early, they'll be golden. Most people have a very backwards looking view of the economy, and don't understand how totally it changes with each generation. To be completely fair, the rate the economy is changing is a very modern phenomenon. Good on you for learning to code, Coding is one of those fields where you can teach yourself pretty far, and you can do just about whatever you want. This was kind of judging as well as being judged. In my high school guitar class, me and one other girl were both really struggling. I judged her as being bad at music, unskilled, stupid, like me. Thing is, I remember an incident of my teacher, who was very technologically improficient, asking my help with typing something he'd written by hand. He was trying to read it aloud to me, but eventually I just asked him to set it down where I could see it, because it was easier and faster for me to touch type it. He was floored by how fast and how well correctly I could type that way, and while many, if not most, 16-year-olds probably can now, back then it was a little less usual. Not too long after, like a week I think, the piano in the music room was, for once, left uncovered. That girl who I judged as being a fellow musical idiot sat down and started playing that piano phenomenally. I have a very visceral and vindicating memory of my guitar teacher looking between her, me, the computer, and my hands, and saying, "You know, that actually explains a lot." TL. Doctor, I judged myself and a guitar classmate as unskilled idiots, discounting just how great our typing and piano skills were. ETA. So apparently my 80 WPM typing speed might not have become as widespread and normalized as I thought, till, due to the shift of computing from desktop and laptop computers towards mobile phones, we are actually seeing a reversal of the trend that young people can type well. A buddy of mine had said something similar about his kid recently. He's a programmer, and he kind of hoped to get his kid similarly into it. I remember joking one day that the kids of today would be able to effortlessly run laps around us when it comes to programming and making technology, not needing much training at all, because they are growing up basically surrounded by it. He just shook his head and said it was the opposite. All the tech of today works pretty seamlessly, requires almost no tinkering, and the daily need of a kid today to put hands to keyboard is minimal at best. Those of us who were born in the 80s, early 90s had an analog childhood and a digital adulthood. So if we were interested in tech, then we got to spend a lot of time looking under the hood and learning the ins outs. This is very helpful for learning how tech works. And since we didn't have smartphones, it was keyboards and desktops, laptops for everything entertainment, so we were very comfortable in that as well. Obviously modern kids can learn to do all this stuff, but my perception of what was some huge advantage to them actually wasn't. Our lack of advanced options and being limited to using a desktop laptop for everything made learning this stuff very fluid and easy for us, while future generations may actually have to put a more concerted effort in to learn it because their stuff isn't as crappy as ours. They have more interesting things available to do equals D. I absolutely agree. The computers of today are so much complicated and intricate than computers when I was a kid. I remember learning basic programming on an 8-bit Amstrad CPC and then getting into assembly coding when I worked out that you could change what is on the screen by addressing memory address and C000 upwards. That small realization led to so much more. Nowadays, even to get to the point where you can type print, "Hello world," takes software installed. If you're looking at something like Visual Studio, even more. I teach computer science to high school kids and the entry level to begin tinkering is definitely much higher than it was. Now it's layers and layers of abstraction piled on top of each other. It's the same with cars. I spent so much time tinkering with my old 1980s VW Polo. Now it's all electronic and hidden away. MMH. That's not so clear cut though. I mean, sure, tinkering stuff like memory addresses is surely more difficult, but at the same time, just creating something is easier than ever. I was born in 1986, grew up around PCS, spent my childhood doing stuff on QBasic, but whenever I tried to get into real programming like C++ or whatever, my interest would just die immediately. I didn't want to build engines or access memory registers. I wanted to make stuff happen in the screen. Today I am a game designer and I absolutely love all the tools, engines and low barrier of entry scripting software out there. They allow MD to ignore all the stuff I want nothing to do with and allow me to focus on the stuff I'm good at. Same goes for art and 3D modeling software. Artists who have absolutely no idea how 3D models work technically can use their sculpting skills and create magnificent stuff. I personally feel like it's easier than ever to get started with programming and tech tinkering. Just not at the super base level you remember from your own childhood. It's easier than ever to get started. Indeed, I could fire up Blender and make myself a 3D sword, or Visual Studio and make whatever program to make my life easier with the plethora of libraries available. But you soon hit into that wall. To jump to that next level without learning half the basics you should have, it comes with its own challenges. Then when you try and delve into it and learn about it, you're met with numerous technical terms until it feels like an endless rabbit hole. My point being is it's easier to learn from the basics the proper way, all the technical stuff. So once you're already in, you don't hit that wall, or if you do, you can more efficiently maneuver around it. It's true, I've even noticed it. My WPM touch typing was significantly better as a teen than it is now, because I use my computer less. The only reason I still need a real keyboard is for programming. Typing. Const X Y equals a wait click button. Right. On mobile is a huge test of patience. Ugh. Mobile IDs are a novel idea, but God, programming on a phone sucks so bad. I imagine it would be made better with a dedicated virtual keyboard. I'm curious what you'd need for a dedicated virtual keyboard. On a mobile, there really is not a lot of space available to you. For a good programmer's mobile keyboard, I think you have too many requirements to make it possible. Comma come to mind initially, then we've got % for comments, and for pointers. Other punctuations in other languages I'm probably not familiar with. I just don't think it's plausible for a good mobile programmer's keyboard. This and autocomplete becoming common in IDs means a lot of very young programmers become absolutely useless if the autocomplete stops working. To be fair, I'm following the trend too. I'm of the opinion that autocomplete in IDs is a very good thing because it takes away the temptation to make short variable function names so they're faster to type. Longer names can be more descriptive. Oh, I completely agree. Verbose naming is much better. Sure, you can get some ridiculous names, but it's a lot better than a collection of 6 random characters that are pulled from 3 words. Makes it a lot easier new people too because they don't have to learn fucking gobbledygook. So the solution is to make phone-sized computer keyboards. BlackBerry, am I a joke to you? Everyone, for the 100th time, yes. You sure it's not to make keyboard-sized phones? Yup, from teaching high school for the past 7 years I can tell you with no exaggeration that 0% of my students have known how to type. Not even a little bit close. I blow my students' bloody minds when I am typing an email and they come up to my desk to ask a question and I turn my head to answer them while still finishing typing the sentence I was in the middle of. A lot of my employees come in to ask me questions and I am constantly in the middle of having to send emails. I'll never forget the look of pure disbelief on that first guy's face when I turned to respond to him and just kept on typing. It seems natural to me, but a pure black magic fuckery move to them. I was an appalling speller until I moved to using a computer full-time in 6th form, aged 16. Then I became an excellent speller. My brain just worked better when typing. Judge the country kids in my English class for being dumb fucks. Until I did the autos class, what I found incomprehensible, they could do with ease. I had become the dumb fuck. Respect the fact that you admitted you were the one judging people. For real, this world would be a much better place if more people could admit their own mistakes such as these and grow from the experience. The problem is we don't let each other grow. We hate people forever for the mistakes they make. As someone who has lived life in and out of a city and rural land, I have acquired more skills than staying in one comfort zone would have. Exposure to the material and having to learn teaches a lot. Edit. I made a typo. People decided to nitpick it. 100% this. I've learned to code and learned to use a wrench. They're both difficult and it's hard for a person who has only done one to wrap his head around the other. Everyone should try and learn as much as possible in their life. Really expands your perspective. Edit. https://wikipedia.org Wikiidiom. Something I've also been thinking about is that older people like to gripe about how young people don't fix their own cars and do their own major housework projects. But realistically, if you have never done it before, don't know how or what to do, and you were never told how to do something like that, then there's a high risk of failure and the price of that failure is a dead car, damage to your home, etc etc. Sure, you can read all the instruction manuals and watch all the YouTube videos you can, but nothing beats actually doing it. And doing it right the first time when it's your first time doing it is a massive barrier for a lot of people who never had parents or mentors to give them that hands-on experience. Personally speaking, I'm lucky that I have my parents to teach me that stuff and are willing open-minded to even trying to learn how to do things that even they don't know how to do. But I don't imagine everyone has had that benefit. I have a friend that deals with old cars. He buys them, tinkers with them, then sells them. Only older cars though. He says I can fix these older cars with a screwdriver and a hammer, meaning that the newer ones have too much electricity and everything being hooked on everything else, or something like that. I don't know shit about cars. My friend does though, and he loves to tinker with them, but not the new ones, because he's into cars, not electronics. Nimian? Exposure to the material and having to learn teaches a lot. I was on thread earlier in which a guy was talking about applying to med school. When asked what he wanted to specialize in, he said nephrology and related vasculature. He explained that his dad was a plumber and taught him all about how pipe diameter affects water pressure and flow, which gave him the foundation for understanding how vascular systems work. I hope his dad knows how important that exposure to the astonishingly related material was for that kid. I had a similar experience in grade 8. We had done a geography test and the kid whose test I marked literally got 5% on it. I was pretty judgy until a few days later when he taught me in great detail how a car engine works. This is all of life. I'm a litigation attorney who has tried everything from DUI to murder and won in state supreme court. In my area of practice I'm well regarded and people come to me with complex issues. I also like fucking with cars, Miatas, Forerunners, Fost, etc. I invariably get halfway through a serious project and have to call my friend who used to wrench and now has a Snap-on franchise. He comes over, unfucks my situation within minutes, and does it without any apparent effort or thought. 2 skills, 2 abilities, 2 different people, but when we're dressed for work guess who gets called sir? The funny thing is he is a deeper thinker than most folks too. Autos class? What is that? The tables have turned. I lived in Argentina, from us, for a little bit as a kid. At a parent-teacher conference early in the school year one art teacher had to break it to my parents that I might be mentally disabled because I don't respond or participate. They let her know I didn't speak any Spanish at the time. She had no idea because no one told her and my name is Spanish and it just didn't occur to her. Teacher, I think your child might be mentally challenged. Parent, no, he is just American. Teacher, Kriya que su hijo podría tener problemas mentales. Parent, what? Muy bien gracias. Y2? Question mark donde está mi familia? Muy bien gracias. Y2? La biblioteca? La biblioteca. Nod, la biblioteca. Estoy en Albano? As a Spanish-speaking person, what the fuck is this thread? We whites don't use phones after 8 p.m. Alejandro. I moved here from Canada, and they think I'm slow. I fell off the jungle gym and when I woke up I was in here. I start fires. Currently 8 a.m. I am in France for a few months. I can barely speak French and my teachers think I am mentally challenged, even though I was acing my classes back home. Even when you become fluent they'll still think you're challenged. Source, lived in France for years. Edit, I just want to clarify that I loved living in France, and made many great friends and memories there. My experience was overwhelmingly positive and I consider it a second mother country, as I posted in a reply below. To be fair, with my friends and colleagues this was never an issue. It was probably about 25% of the time and exclusively with strangers or workers at shops, who would immediately switch to English the moment I hesitated or accidentally used poor pronunciation. I should also mention that it happened a lot more when I lived in Paris than when I lived in Lyon. The worst was actually whenever I visited Geneva. Edit 2. This, https://www.youtube.com/watch?vqvy1swxls ampersand feature equals YouTube. Can confirm. French people are ruthless when you make a mistake. La chat. Say fucking you fucking idiot. This is pretty much what happened to me. I got treated better when I didn't even attempt to speak French outside of basic manners. Was hoping to get good at French but after 3 months of that bullshit I was done. and coasted by with 80% of my French interactions consisting of Jesus désolé, je ne parle pas français, merci. On the bright side, it gained me new respect for immigrants who deal with that shit. Yeah, I doubled down, which was definitely a mistake, although at least now I get to say I speak French on my CV, which I guess is useful. Please confirm I'm having an existential crisis about my choices. Living in France now. This is absurdly accurate. I am French and I always wonder who the fucks people at Reddit are hanging out, because I almost never see that attitude towards me. The one time a guy in our friends group made a bit of a rude and ignorant comment to a foreigner like that, he actually was the one mocked, and even his girlfriend told him maybe you just should not talk. Yeah, I speak intermediate French and was able to get around fine. Most people were polite and appreciated the fact that I approached them speaking French if I had a question instead of a cringy, "Hey, do you all know where X Street is?" I think it might be a regional thing. I spent most of my time near Bordeaux and was only in Paris for a day each on my arrival and departure. I think it's regional too. I lived in southern France 2 separate times and can't really think of ever being treated this way. In Paris when I visited, people were gruffer, but that felt normal for a big city too, so I dunno. But southern France definitely seems more chill and laid back than the north. It's more like Spain in some ways. They even have siestas, although I forget the name. It's a well-known stereotype in France that Parisians are arrogant, rude and in a hurry, so don't throw the whole north in there, lol. That being said, it's a stereotype and exaggerated a lot. I think it's just like the stereotype of gruff New Yorkers in the USA. Then you actually go there and, like Paris, 99.9% of people are just normal and reasonably amiable. I don't get why people think that just because you can't speak their language, that you are mentally challenged. We had a kid from Greece one year in my high school and we all knew that his English was terrible, but we didn't think he was stupid. I remember there was a math question, something about determining the angle of a ladder based on its shadow, and this kid doesn't know how to do it even though it should have been an easy question. He finally raises his hand and says, "What's a ladder?" and the teacher explains it to him and pulls up a picture. You see the light bulb go off and he immediately solves the problem. Not stupid, just doesn't know English. I'm also from the US, but I'm of Mexican descent living in Mexico right now. Sometimes when my son's teacher, or anyone, really, is speaking to me, I have asked her to L5 because the Spanish I learned in the US is so not the same as the Spanish spoken here. It gets really frustrating. And I have a newfound respect for fortunes coming to the US not knowing any English and learning from scratch. Dislodged. I think the word you are looking for is dialect. We had a Mexican guy working with us in Puerto Rico. We were in the Coast Guard and he heard someone on the radio talking about bottled water. He thought the guy was taking on water, aka sinking. We almost launched a hello for a guy who wanted to know where to buy bottled water. My sister's kindergarten teacher called in our mother for a conference saying that she needed to see a psychiatrist, because after a trip to the zoo, when asked to draw something you saw at the zoo, my sister drew a trash can. My mother took her to the optometrist instead of the psychiatrist. She needed glasses and the trash can was the only thing at the zoo she'd seen clearly. I needed a performance art class for my degree. I took drawing. I made many mistakes and etiquette errors. Did you know you're not supposed to talk to the nude models? I didn't. It's also really frowned upon to request specific positions because you find drawing foreshortening quite challenging. Oh, also, I suck at drawing as it turns out. The prof wanted to give me a D. We had a chat. I told him I should be graded like I was a psych major with no talent whatsoever who did develop a number of technical improvements over the semester. I got an A. He said I should have taken debate instead, because I clearly had a talent for that. Once someone on Reddit started complaining about something and said I wasn't a real man for a bunch of reasons. I'm a woman, so they're not exactly wrong. I get that all the time too. My personal favorite was when I said it's difficult to date lesbians. It's a common issue with women that they were taught men should make the first move. So with 2 girls no one wants to move first. Everyone assumed I was a dude harassing lesbians and trying to make them straight, which is why they wouldn't go out with me. Made the comment before going to work and I had -200 by lunch. Mayo, you're my hero. Slightly related, it's annoying that society teaches people that men have to make the first move. I believe people judge you because of the SGT in your username, which is another obvious misconception. And the doctor in that story was a woman. Everyone on Reddit is assumed male until proven otherwise. I assumed I had a pretty gender neutral username, but everyone thinks I'm a dude. Brilliant. Even in the age where everyone's grandma has Facebook the whole, there are no girls on the internet. https://knowyourmeme.com memes. There are no girls on the internet. Meme is some people's reality. The internet, where men are men, women are men, and children are FBI agents. And children are FBI agents. Cute 14-year-old girl, really flirty and sexy. Now she's telling me she's an undercover cop. How fucking cool is that for someone her age? I posted on our Amethysol one time over an argument me and my fiance got into. I said an insensitive comment and I think she overreacted completely. I got grilled, but all the dudes saying I was the arsehole because women are sensitive about their looks and I should keep that in mind. Men shouldn't talk to women like that. A douchebag like me is lucky to have a woman like him at all. I am a woman. Dating a woman, lol, she's just more sensitive than me. No man can kill me. I am no man. No man. https://xkcd.com/1704/ I had someone tell me once, you're just jealous you can't get your dick wet. Well, you're right, I can't, because I don't have one. Sometimes I have penis envy, but then I realize I probably wouldn't get any action anyway, so it's moot. The formaldehyde I suspend them and keeps them plenty wet. Thanks. LOL. Similarly, some guy started going off on me for supporting maternity leave, throwing insults at me meant for a woman. I'm a 20-something guy. Who would be against maternity leave though? Brainwashed by capitalism would be my guess. A child-free female friend of mine is against it because it's not fair and she won't get free vacation as she is choosing not to have kids. Ugh. As a mom on leave with a 4-month-old, that frustrates me. When exactly does this turn into a vacation? Not to be all hippy-dippy, but there is this idea of karmic fairness. If a society is fair, then some people will get things you don't. Maternity leave is one of the things which allow women to have the same things as men. Specifically the ability to have both a career and a family. If you're someone who believes that women should be barefoot and pregnant in the kitchen, then maternity leave is a direct challenge to the idea that women need to be subjugated to men. A guy once tried to start a fight with me by telling me I'm a cocksucker. As a straight female, it isn't exactly the nicest way to put it, but yeah, I am a cocksucker. The whole sentence wasn't exactly a display of brilliance anyway. You fucking cocksucker. Fucking fight me like a real man. But the guy wasn't exactly wicked smart to begin with, since he was my co-worker, and tried to pick up a fight with me, the sole female employee, fabrication shop. I was a welder. In front of several other co-workers who had already told him to quit with that sexist shit, and also in front of the shop foreman who had told him in no uncertain terms that the company didn't tolerate that kind of behavior. I like how cocksucker is thrown around like an insult. Like, okay, so you don't want me to do this nice thing for you. Not that it's vain to do that for a guy throwing around insults. I've had people do things like this, and if I say I'm a woman, they're like, okay, whatever, you're some fat loser in your mom's basement that can't get pussy. I don't really understand why some people think that women on Reddit are exclusively on Gone Wild subs. Remembering people's names. I'm great at remembering faces and things about people, except for their names. People think I'm inconsiderate, when in fact I just can't remember names half the time. It doesn't help that I can remember massive amounts of dumb trivia and school material, but just not the names of people I meet. My husband is the same way. He always tells people I'm terrible with names, so I won't remember it. But if I see you in 15 years, I'll remember your face. They usually are okay with it. I'm autistic and I have exactly the same problem. Learning and remembering names is a massive struggle. I also suck at recognizing social cues, mainly because it was almost impossible for my parents to teach me them back when most kids learn them. So I come off as rude and socially awkward, especially since I have no filter and like to say it like it is. My handwriting also sucks, but to be fair, they don't teach people how to handwrite anymore. On the other hand, I type well and can make very thoughtful posts and essays. I often question the big picture more than most people, and said tendency to say it like it is lets me more readily discuss controversial but important topics since I don't easily get offended. Once at my workplace, I asked for help to open a box because I really couldn't open it. This one girl I worked with looked at me with disgust and didn't help me. She later talked shit about me and said I'm fucking stupid. I was born with polydactyly and they cut off my 2 extra fingers and fixed a lot of stuff. I can't use all my fingers properly. By the way, fuck you Sarah. Edit. Wow, I never thought that a comment about calling out Sarah's bullshit would be my most upvoted one, nor that it would blow up like that. Thank you, kind strangers. I have a feeling those last few sentences should have been your response. My fingers don't work. Also fuck you. But if they did, I'd be flipping you off. I'd flip you off if I had the fingers to spare. Yeah, fuck you Sarah. Edit. Damn. I got a silver. Obligatory thank you kind stranger. Yeah fuck Sarah. Ah fuck Sarah. My friend was cool with someone in HR. A whole different issue. But they told him that there were many complaints about him because he walked too slow and took his time going from point A to point B. My friend is recovering from ACL surgery. At the time this was only like 3 months in. He even wore a huge knee brace for a while. Mayo. My husband loved to read as a child despite his mild dyslexia, but in 2nd grade he started to really struggle with school. After being held back for a year and being told by a teacher that he was a slow kid, another teacher took note of the oddity of my husband's change of learning. He suggested to his mom to have his eyes checked. Turns out my hubby is blind as a bat and needed glasses. Sadly, he never recovered his love of reading. 90% of what Albert Einstein quotes on the internet was not said by Albert Einstein. Internet 2019. Albert Einstein once said 90% of my quotes on the internet were not said by me. 90% of statistics aren't true. You are 73.2% more likely to be believed if you use uneven numbers. 69% of statistics are made up on the spot. 4.20% of people believe this. You can, make up any quote and attribute it to anyone somewhat famous, and people on the internet will believe it. Abraham Mr. President Lincoln, 1960. I believe it was Abraham Lincoln who first published a study debunking all the internet memes about Albert Einstein. 90% of what Albert Einstein quotes on the internet was not said by Albert Einstein. Internet 2019. Albert Einstein. I was a ballerina and I always had a hard time picking up choreography. Other dancers could watch a dance once and know it. Some could even do it from a video. I needed to be shown a combination a few times, and to go over it a few more, and even then I would forget it the next day. I felt really stupid. Anyway, ballet didn't really work out, and now I have a PhD, so I'm not a complete idiot. I had a similar experience. Picked up ballet after my undergrad and I was terrible, but enjoyed it. Bumped myself up into a higher standard class where everyone could just effortlessly recall routines from one viewing, and I just couldn't. Really hurt my self-esteem, and the girls in the class were very isolating to me. The sole guy there, which sucked. Took up rock climbing after, and love it. It did underline that I may have slight working memory problems though. I got into salsa dancing a few years ago and even performed a few times with a dance team. I still mix up my lefts and rights when I'm learning something new though. The ballroom community is way more accepting and patient than the ballet community in my experience. I really fell in love with it after growing up in ballet. If you still enjoy ballet, you could look around for drop-in classes for adults. Those tend to be more for people who either just enjoy it or want the exercise. In my experience, the people are pretty laid back. Working memory problems. Thank you. I never put that together. I used to do taekwondo and could never do the forms without a lot of extra help. The instructor always just showed it once and expected us to get it, and I was always frustrated at what a poor teacher he was. Why would he expect his students to do something that's clearly impossible? But I have definite working memory problems. I've always known that. Never saw the connection. Similar for me, my entire family is into handball and actively played during my teenage years. I was mediocre at best, never scored and was hesitant to go into physical contact with opponents. In my early 20s, I figured out I had a thing for art and writing instead. The same thing happened to me. I was learning contemporary jazz and I was generally athletic and flexible and I can freestyle, so I thought I'd be okay at it. LOL, I was so wrong. The instructor kept telling me I was just afraid of fucking up too much and I just have to loosen up. But I could loosen up just fine. Learning choreography is so difficult. I was great at the stuff we did every day and just so bad at picking up routines. I have a PhD, so I'm not a complete idiot. I have a PhD too, and I'm a complete idiot. So many moments in my life. I was unfortunately born a girl who likes boy things. I love cars, mechanics, truck driving and long road trips. My dad was a mechanic. From the time I was tiny, I was in his garage or workshop, wanting to help him, learning the names of tools and car parts. When I was around 9, I told him I was gonna grow up to be a mechanic someday, just like him. I thought he'd be proud. He told me that girls aren't mechanics and I'd better find something else to do. He wouldn't let me near his garage after that. Even when I got my own car and went to change the oil on it myself, he caught me and kicked me out and said that I was just a girl. I've heard that my whole life. I am disappointed in myself because now I'm not a young woman anymore. I've forgotten over the years what car parts are called. I still love to take long road trips, but my dad, and mom, for that matter, squashed out so much ambition. I really hate them and myself for allowing it. I hate professions that are typically done by females. I'm not good at any of them, but have done them my entire working career to fit the norm and not rock the boat. I feel like life has been wasted and opportunity disposed of. It is never too late to follow your dreams. No, this is true, but hysterically ironic is my life. When I'm finally free and thinking on my own, I've become too incurably ill to do a damn thing about it. Life is cruel, yet beautiful. Wait, what? What disease did you get? Totally not your fault. Do not blame yourself about this in the slightest. Shame on all parents who squash their kids. Kills me. Oh, very true. But at some point, those kids need to realize that, as adults, we're the ones in control of our futures. Took me way too long to get there. That's on me. They're fucking brainwashing. That's on them. That's so sad, and I'm sorry. If my daughter had a passion for my work, I couldn't imagine anything more fulfilling. I feel you. I was very close to my dad growing up, and as a teenager expressed that I wanted to receive musical training. Singing was the only thing I really enjoyed, and I'd been trying to nurture that skill in school choir. He flipped out, said all musicians would end up as drug addicts on the streets, and just refused to hear any more about it. To this day I still wonder what I'd be doing if I started training all those years ago. I think my time is past for that, but I hope parents out there are more nurturing than mine were. Yup, I loved music as well. Still do. I've always wondered what I'd be like today if I'd been born into a family that was supportive instead of hands-off. Alas, that's my family. Love them anyway, even if I don't like them. I also wanted to be a mechanic growing up. I was in high school 20 years ago, and signed up for auto shop class. The guidance counselor told me that all girls who take the class get sexually harassed, and suggested I pick a different elective. I took the class anyway. I spent the semester in class with one other female person, getting harassed in all manners of ways from the boys in class on a daily basis, and didn't learn much more than the proper name for every tool in the shop. I also learned how to change my oil. If I have a shop and a lift, I wasn't able to do it at home later because the oil can on my stupid compact car incredibly hard to access without shop equipment. I didn't take the second class because I was sick of the constant harassment, and didn't feel like the teachers was all that knowledgeable. When I was in college and told my mother I wanted to be a mechanic, she laughed at me, told me that I didn't have the fine motor skills for it, and that I should stick to my studies. Now everything is so computerized that being a mechanic is an entirely different job that I don't really want. If I could learn and work only on classic cars all day, I'd be in heaven. But I try to focus on achievable dreams. I'm a female who used to be a mechanic. It is a tough industry for women, but it's becoming more common, and some shops even prefer women mechanics for their attention to detail. Whatever you do in life, try to not let what anyone says get to you. Also, cars are much more fun when it's not your job. The guidance counselor told me that all girls who take the class get sexually harassed, and suggested I pick a different elective. I took the class anyway. I spent the semester in class with one other female person, getting harassed in all manners of ways from the boys in class on a daily basis. I didn't take the second class because I was sick of the constant harassment. As a former male mechanic, this is an unfortunate reality. You rock that boat, girl. It is never too late. Fellow girl who likes boy things and is currently pursuing a mechanical engineering degree and is constantly outnumbered by boys in class. If you have a place to work, it's not too late to get into car repair. Even investing in your own tools will pay itself off almost immediately. I bought a nice socket set for less than it would have cost for a mechanic to replace my alternator. YouTube has also made car work infinitely easier. Having videos of everything is priceless. I'd love to, but I need to get better first. My health isn't great and I'll be a good 6 months to a year before I'm on my feet full time again. I don't care any longer if I'm the oldest person in class. I want to enjoy a job, not resent it. When I do my 2 hours of daily piano practice, I begin with 5 octaves of scales in every key, major and minor. My brother got weary of hearing this day after day and said, if you keep playing those scales, you're going to turn into a fish. You can tune a piano, but you can't tune a fish. Well hello, I heard you needed my services. Arbitlajuiking. Cosmic. Incredible. One day you'll be playing La Campanella and you'll be in shock. My boyfriend starts his practice the same way. I went through a cycle of thinking they were cool, to finding them annoying to now where I find them comforting. It's a sound that very specifically reminds me of him. I see it all the time in the army based on fitness test scores, or even perceived fitness test scores. As one of my old military science professors taught my class, the military is the only place in the world where, for some reason, people will act like you're total idiot, drag on the team, and failure at life because you did 41 push-ups instead of at least 42, despite being the exact same person and critical member of the team from a day before. I can personally vouch for this one. I was in training for a SIGINT MOS at featuring Huachuca, a job that there were only a few hundred people in the world doing at a given time. I was third in my class of about 25 people, but I was kicked out for too many PT failures. It took me a long time to get over it. TBH, maybe I still have some resentment. No regrets. I made a best friend I still talk to frequently after nearly 20 years, and if it wasn't for the army forcing me to learn how to function around people, who knows what would have become of me. In school I was too nerdy for the jocks and too jockish for the nerds. Now that we have all grown up, I take everyone's money in fantasy football. Improvise, adapt, overcome. Smart moves, my friend. Improvise, adapt, overcome, profit, FTFY, step 1, improvise, step 2, adapt, step 3, overcome, step 4, step 5, profit, FTFY, act, adapt, readapt, act. Too crazy for Boys Town, too much of a boy for Crazy Town. The child was an outcast. Enjoy the bucket of fish heads, Hugo. This is exactly what I was looking for. Hugo's scar is on the wrong side. This means he couldn't have been the evil left twin. That means the evil twin is, and always has been. But, oh, don't look so shocked. Jockish. They have a spray for that now, bro. Doesn't that mean you were just like the vast majority of people at school, then? Now here's an analyst, a rare halfway point between the two. Presumably he means that he has serious interests in both sports and nerdy stuff, rather than just not being super interested in either, which is where the majority of people probably fall. The bridge, as those people used to be called in my school. One of my instructors in Fire Academy had a real hatred for me for some reason. The other instructor was fine with me, or at least he stayed neutral, but this guy went above and beyond in trying to find ways to cut me with a sarcastic comment any chance he got. On the day before we were to go out on a job placement for 8 weeks, he was giving everyone words of encouragement, until he got to me, at which point he said something along the lines of "keep your mouth shut and you'll be fine." Perfect words of encouragement when sending students out to fire stations, where they'd be expected to function as a fully capable firefighter on the crew, right? It really fucked with me, and made me doubt myself and my decision to pursue a career as a firefighter. I got to the fire station for my first shift and it couldn't have been any different for me. They treated me as an equal. They worked with me to improve any areas I lacked in. I still suck at ropes and knots though. Despite all the extra training I got. Sorry guys. Only after working a couple of shifts with them, they insisted that I come out to their Christmas party, and they totally didn't have to do that. Many of the crew I worked with has become lifelong friends of mine. They're all fantastic humans and firefighters. One of them even took me aside and told me he thought that I was going to be a fantastic firefighter because he felt I could walk the walk and talk the talk. It was a huge boost for me to hear that. Unfortunately, the guy that told me that eventually passed away from cancer, very young. But I often find myself asking what would, name, do or how would he handle this? It's made me become a better firefighter and a better person. Me judging another guy. I served with this guy who we all believe was a complete idiot. Just everything he said and did was idiotic. While we were in Thailand, he spent an hour talking to a Thai Marine. I will be damned if he didn't learn enough of the language to take a taxi around a city. I firmly believe he would have become fluent if we left him there for a week. So I'm from India and education system in here used to be really bad. We have special exams known as board exams and those scores can help us get into a better college uni. The issue here is, our teachers force us to write the exact same way the answers are given as in the textbook, including the punctuation. I know it sounds crazy but it's true. Nothing must be skipped. The teachers who must help the students to actually study and understand the concepts, ask us to mug things up BC all they want is 100% pass percentage and not the proper education. And me on the other hand was terrible at memorizing and remembering stuff if I don't understand the concept in the first place, so I failed some subjects during my monthly tests and for that I was made to feel like I'm stupid and useless. And the only thing I told to myself was this quote, but I got some decent scores at my final exams. Thanks to YouTube. Edit. I can't believe that students who are still in high schools are still going through the same shit that I experienced 4 years ago. That's why I wrote used to be. BC I'm not aware of the current scenario. And trust me the unis and colleges are just a little better not that great either, because people around me carry it on from their school life and do the same road here as well. And people say they're unemployed I mean the very reason is right here. How can one survive in a field where you must be an expert? If you don't know you just memorize the fundamental principles in the first place. Same here. I have my boards next year and I fucking hate the fact that we have to write the exact bullshit from the book or we'll lose marks. That's not even really learning. It's rote memorization. Jeez, is that really how bad it is? I lost a few points in my mocks because the order of bullet points was wrong. So honestly, it is awful. It is exactly as bad as it sounds. Worse if your memory is bad. Since the parents grew up with the same system they just simply force the kids to memorize lessons. There are schools that train you to memorize everything from science and maths that they neglect everything else. I've studied with students who could look at a physics derivation for 10-15 minutes and write it down with minimal help from the source, even though they can barely communicate in anything apart from their native tongue. The system gives you numbers but at the cost of understanding. I was forced to attend art classes and team sports phys ed in school, mandatory until year 11 art or 13, respectively. Those two made sure that my average was ruined. I can't draw or throw a ball even if my life depended on it. Got the grades to match, and B, in my most awkward social phase, I got humiliated regularly by well-meaning teachers who couldn't understand that being good at math and physics does not translate into drawing or predicting a ball's movement, forcing me to do it again, and again, and again, while the whole class enjoyed the show. I understand your frustrations. However, I think it's important to work on body coordination, at least until you have a basic proficiency. It comes into play often in life, from slipping on ice in the winter to assembling IKEA furniture in your home. To be fair, assembling IKEA is more an exercise in small unit leadership and project management. One teacher was intent on holding me back the first year in school, kindergarten elementary, age 5, because I sucked at arts and crafts. The next year they let me skip a grade cause I already knew how to read and write, which I taught myself a year prior. They just didn't test it at the time and it wasn't part of the curriculum the first year. I currently work at my local McDonald's. I'm 16, and since I live in Quebec, it's a French establishment. French is my third language, but I'm still constantly treated like I'm stupid when I don't completely understand. The worst part is, I'm very eloquent in my first and second language, Bulgarian and English. Public speaking and writing are my passions. But nobody at work thinks I could possibly be intelligent because I'm being judged on my fluency in my third language. Never mind the fact that speaking 3 languages when you're in high school is more than any of them can do. Shit is frustrating. That's Quebec for you. Don't let them shit on you. They just hate anyone whose first language isn't French. Edit. After rereading my comment, I judge that it came off as I am embarrassment material a bit. Sorry. Judged my friend for having very naive and dumb knowledge beliefs about stuff like economics, politics, geography, history, language, culture etc. But she was extremely social and extroverted, while I was this somewhat grumpy guy and sucked at making connections with people. Still do. Nowadays, she works at a high position in the marketing department at a very major global tech corporation's office in our country. In Europe, I'm a sysadmin and a half programmer. I ended up studying policy and taking some computer science classes. I wouldn't say my education is bad or that it's a useless degree, just that being able to make friends and influence people is much more important than having a lot of knowledge. It's important to have skills, but it's more important to have the skill to show off your skills to the world. I'm learning this the hard way on my 20s. You have time to hone them in. Keep at it. I know folks who are just realizing this going into their 40s. 10's my age, young and fresh. Bring a game. Put me to test. I am 20, fast and fly, but fear the world's too big for I here's 30, overwhelmed. How do people push themselves? 40, 50, 60, gone. I swear I wish I had been strong. The thing I learned is that intelligence is multifaceted, and not necessarily the same as knowledge. Having little knowledge doesn't mean you're dumb. Somebody could be an expert at something like programming yet have poor knowledge of history, politics or culture. Your friend is probably a lot smarter than you think. She just isn't interested in the things you think make you intelligent. I'm in the same boat as you. I have a lot of general knowledge but a mediocre career. If either of us were really that smart, we'd have made better decisions. Probably a lot smarter than they think of themselves. I have 2 friends who are very social, light of the party type of people. They both don't think they're that great, but I broke it down to one of them once, that the way they approach a situation, even if it's obvious to them, it seems like they make the correct social decision on hundreds of interactions while most people barely make 25% or something like that. It was bullshit but he got the point. How he navigates social situations and then applies that to his career is actually something way too many people don't only struggle at but simply fail doing. It takes a lot of practice, intelligence and blind confidence to walk into a room full of strangers and somehow navigate every interaction into having a room full of friends by the time that night is over. When I was asked to climb a tree, "But you're a fox?" When I said Albert Einstein once said if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree it will live its whole life thinking it's stupid, and they said he never said that. Edit. Yeah, I'm that guy, big whoop, wanna fight about it? Thanks for my first ever gold, kind stranger. Yes, it's a quote by Vladimir Lenin and it actually says, if you judge proletariat by its ability to amass property and capital, the proletariat will always end up admiring the extraordinary talent of the capitalists rather than realizing it is being oppressed. I am the walrus. Shut the fuck up, Donnie. Removed. So I'm from India and education system in here used to be really bad. We have special exams known as board exams and those scores can help us get into a better college uni. The issue here is, our teachers force us to write the exact same way the answers are given as in the textbook, including the punctuation. I know it sounds crazy but it's true. Nothing must be skipped. The teachers who must help the students to actually study and understand the concepts, ask us to mug things up BC all they want is 100% pass percentage and not the proper education. And me on the other hand was terrible at memorizing and remembering stuff if I don't understand the concept in the first place, so I failed some subjects during my monthly tests and for that I was made to feel like I'm stupid and useless. And the only thing I told to myself was this quote, but I got some decent scores at my final exams, thanks to YouTube. Oh my god, I know what you mean. It was horrible. Masters is a bit better, but I still get the stupid vibes. The Indian education system makes no sense. Removed. When I was 7, I was in first grade. I couldn't really run because it turned out that I had both legs wrong. I had my Achilles tendon too short, my kneecaps were outside its place and my femur was slightly 28 degrees rotated, and I had knock knees. No one knew about this, only me who was suffering every 4 steps lol anyway. Everyone told me I was lazy, that I should go outside and do some sport. I was a fatty because I couldn't even run. Mark IT0. The rug really tied the room together, did it not? VLADIMIR. ILYICH. I didn't say that about the stupid fish climbing trees, A. Einstein. I didn't kill myself, J. Epstein. Fish are fucking stupid, Albert Einstein. Can't even fucking climb a tree, idiot fish. Albert Einstein. Fucking Einstein. Can't even solve unified theory. Fish. Nearly 60% of all facts on the internet are actually false. Abraham Lincoln. 30% of the time. For the confused or curious among us, he didn't say it apparently. https://www.history.com/news/here-r-6-things- Albert Einstein never said. I bet I could come up with a bunch of other things he never said either. It's crazy how much Einstein is misquoted. Who is fucking starting this? Albert Einstein. My grade school teacher said my handwriting was so bad I must think I was training to be a doctor. Now I am one. When I worked on farms I was a simple farm hand. No one thought much of me because I was the bottom of the totem pole, and one day a sheep was having trouble giving birth to her babies. No matter which way the vet and my boss turned her or helped her, she couldn't give birth. However, the night before I watched a program on the TV where a woman had the exact same issue during her labor and they stood her up and she gave birth easily. So I helped the sheep to get as vertical as possible and the birth just happened in a snap and it was easy for her. No one questioned me after that and I was seen as the smartest of the farm hands. My mother had borderline. She caused a lot of trouble. She constantly judged me for not remaining emotionally sound in incredibly stressful situations. Threatening to kill herself, put bars on my windows, send me to psyche hospitals. Blaming everyone else for fights when she always overreacted and caused them in the first place. Saying I ruined Christmas dinner because I knew she would be there and didn't want to show up. She was so scary I couldn't even speak to her when she pried the lock off my bedroom door and sat down on my bed to talk to me. She always called me a mute and said I had mental problems. Save for some obvious residual issues that crop up in anyone who went through this, I have very little problem, emotion-wise or communication-wise, with other people besides her. Why don't you just keep everything organized, so you don't lose stuff? Turns out, it's because I'm ADHD. Being disorganized and losing stuff is literally my natural state of being. I used to get the school is easy. All you have to do is pay attention. Thanks. I mean it is. It's just very hard for some people to focus. School is simple, because all you have to do is pay attention. School is hard, because all you have to do is pay attention. Pay attention and get medicated. Drugs. And even when you do the work to stay organized and not forget stuff, it still happens more than it would for everyone else. I feel that living with ADHD is interesting sometimes, lol. I was undiagnosed for so many years and was finally diagnosed when I was 20 with ADHD. All throughout my childhood I was always told by friends and family that I was so forgetful and messy and couldn't stay organized. I hated school planners, failed all the organized assignments in high school, and it was a constant battle about the state of my room. Nobody wanted to diagnose me because I'm female and it's a boy thing. Being diagnosed had everything make more sense. I can still drive my fiance kind of crazy because I'm good with just settling for chaos and mess in our home, but we're working on addressing it. Nobody wanted to diagnose me because I'm female and it's a boy thing. This drives me so fucking nuts. I'm sorry that happened to you. That's the one. I've just had to accept that I'll forget something on every trip I make, so all I can do is try to make sure it isn't something important. I made a 4-tap rule where I tap the most important items: phone, keys, wallet, glasses, before I leave to make sure I have them. Anything else is fair game on the train to forgetful land. Spectacles, testicles, wallet, and watch, cell phone and keys. It is interesting sometimes, but it also sucks when you actually want to pay attention in class or for a presentation or something. It's damn near impossible. I've taken therapy for it. It's not too hard to manage it anymore. but there's always the eventual fuck up. My general rule of thumb is to always look back. You wouldn't believe how many times I've looked back and realized how I've forgotten something. I feel like you can find us by watching for the people who get a concerned, suspicious look and glance around everywhere every time they leave a place. Except for the times we actually forgot something, that is. I have ADHD and I'm meticulously organized. Tidying everything in sight, one of the main ways I distract myself from doing what I should be doing. See, I do try to do that. However, halfway through tidying, I find something I lost. Suddenly, tidying up isn't important because I wondered where that went. It's so weird. I guess I should find a place for it, and before I know it, I'm reorganizing my drawers or some shit, rather than actually tidying the mess. That's hyperfocusing, also a symptom of ADHD. We just can't win. There are some benefits if you can manage it. The most important thing is to make sure that everything takes one on-chain thought to figure out where it goes away, and that there isn't a lot of space, or God forbid, doorways, between where something is typically used and where it needs to be when not in use. If this means you own an electric toothbrush for the sink and one for the shower, so be it. The other thing you'll find is that maybe most people are obsessed with putting things away, and never think of whether that's the smart thing to do. If an item gets used every day, and is used on a particular section of a workbench, that's where it belongs, even if the rest of its fellows are in a cupboard across the room. Just because normal people don't notice the mental friction from the interruption, and time wasted walking across the room, like ADHD havers do, doesn't mean it doesn't affect them. If you want a space designed properly for efficiency and convenience, get a self-aware person with ADHD to do it. I'm autistic, so just take your pick from half of my everyday interactions with people. I was told that I was pathetic because I didn't know how to back a trailer with a pickup at 29 years old. I grew up without a father and never had anyone to teach me really much of anything. To this day I've only changed oil in a car once, and that was when I was 16, so I forgot how to do it. The point I had to make to this guy was that nobody knows how to do anything until the first time they do it, and everyone's lives are different. My life played out in a way that I either never had anyone teach me to back a trailer or never had to do it until I was 29. Shit happens. Everything in the internet is true. Julius Caesar 1420. Wasn't it biggest dickus in 69 BC? Went through a 2-year community college biomed program. Had only 3 or 4 different teachers throughout the 2 years, and we had a small class. Had one teacher that told me on multiple occasions that I wasn't a good fit for this program. He had 25 plus years working in biomed and at least 10 years of teaching it. Really had me second guessing my life. Admittedly I was horrible at all the homework, but did decent on the hands-on parts of class. The last semester an internship was required. The teacher that didn't like me found internship placements for all my classmates and told me since I wasn't a good student that I should try find my own at some sort of basic electronic repair store. Just to spite him I went into the same hospital that all my other classmates were given internships at and interviewed for an internship. At the end of the internship semester I was the only one who was offered a position. Suck it. I'm a chemistry major at university here in the US. I took a few extra years to get started, and spread the courses out over about 6 years rather than 4. I'm 26 now, but fellow students always assume I'm the idiot of the group project. They are mostly right. They are all better at chemistry, but I'll work on the projects till 2 AM if it means I'll learn the material and can sleep knowing I did my part. Also I'm a bartender, and most of these guys act like they've never interacted with people socially, let alone stepped foot in a bar. I'm hopeful my social skills and work ethic will take me further than my degree. I worked as a private groom for a family whose previous groom was a world-class groomer and had worked for some of the world's best horse riders. I was constantly being compared to her with everything I did when they full well knew I was fresh out of college and only an apprenticeship under my belt. I was happy to leave there. So I was a young lawyer, new to trial work, full of awkwardness and insecurity. A couple of times in my first months, I said things so stupid I thought I might get fired. My boss followed me at the elbow to my first trial and he was nervous for me, giving me advice on dozens of things I hadn't asked about and that I suspected were irrelevant. He kept whispering instructions to me at the trial table, even as I was questioning witnesses, getting me confused about what I should be paying attention to, and even whispered instructions as the judge talked from the bench. And finally the judge, who knew my boss, said to him, "Tommy, you shut up and let the boy learn. He'll do fine." Late in the trial, the judge wasn't going to let me assert one argument I wanted to use, that the plaintiff's choice between differently priced goods should have put him on notice that the goods were of different quality. "That's not a rule of law," said the judge. "No," I said, "it's a rule of thumb. When you buy a car, you know why a Chevy and a Cadillac are priced differently. One is better and nicer than the other." The judge nodded and changed his mind. I could use my argument as I wanted. On the subway back to the office after I won the trial, my boss mentioned that moment and said it had proven I was a good hire. "If you make people think you're clumsy and in the back of your pocket you have the ability to change a mind that's been made up," he said. "You can do almost anything." That was about 25 years ago, and I haven't looked back. I was a fat kid in middle school, and everyone thought I was lazy and stupid. A few years later, I was running several miles at a time, and I became the first person in my family to go to college. "Your name?" "Albert Einstein." I was a fat kid in middle school, and everyone thought I was lazy and stupid. A few years later, I was running several miles at a time, and I became the first person in my family to go to college. Albert Einstein. If you were bad at something, then became good at that very same thing later on with practice willpower, then it's not similar to what OP was talking about. My parents used to make me feel bad about being the slowest kid in track and field. I would always struggle even with a 7-minute mile. It wasn't my body that got tired, it was that I felt like I couldn't breathe fast enough. I was always running out of breath and had to stop and catch my breath. 15 years later and I was diagnosed with asthma, exercise cold allergen induced. I took my first puff of albuterol having not run for months and getting fat, and I was able to run without stopping. I was this super smart kid who would get 6s and 1 F, always in math. No one thought to test me for a learning disability the entire time. Turns out it wasn't that I wasn't applying myself, but it was dyscalculia. Forgave my parents, who were and are very apologetic. Still pretty miffed that I probably went through 20 plus math teachers, tutors, and even a tutoring place, and no one thought a thing was weird about that. If your kid is teaching themselves Japanese, can read Middle English without a guide, and learns to fix an air conditioner on their own, but can't divide, there probably is an underlying issue. My 3rd grade English and math teacher used me a "don't be like him" example and literally told the whole class that I was stupid and would never amount to anything, and they all laughed at me. Fucking assholes. A little background. School was hard for me. I couldn't sit still and was always distracted by something. I never got good grades in elementary school, and even now I still have trouble focusing. ADHD? Sounds like you should get tested for ADHD inattentive type. Have you ever been to a professional about it? No, I never have. Other than school, I don't think it's hindered me enough to see a professional. Side note, I took my girlfriend's Ritalin once. Man, my head got so quiet and I was so focused. I have no idea if Ritalin reacts differently if taken by someone without ADHD, but maybe that's something to look into. If it's not hindering you, then I guess there's no immediate reason to get diagnosed. But remember, ADHD also has more extensive effects than just attention span, and it's totally fine to ask to be tested even if it's not hindering your day-to-day life. My best friend didn't get diagnosed with ADHD until 2 years ago, and her diagnosis has helped her find ways to be more organized at home and know how it also affects her emotions, thinking process, etc. So her diagnosis helped her with more things than just school and work. But if you ever get curious, I think it's worth knowing just for the sake of knowing. Ritalin is a stimulant. I think most people without ADHD would get energy and, well, stimulated from taking it, rather than focused. My very simplified understanding of ADHD, mainly from abnormal psych classes many years ago, so take this with a grain of salt, is that ADHD symptoms are causes by part of the brain underperforming. The stimulant meds boosted part of the brain, which helps with focus and such. So someone not ADHD would get overstimulated by the meds. Well, I went into a coding interview once and the interviewer asked almost only electrical engineering related question. I felt extremely stupid. There's a real stigma against sex writing among a lot of writers, that somehow it doesn't count, or that it's just lazy trash. On a lot of writers forums, you'll see people looking down their nose at the smut writers, with the implication that they only write smut because they lack the talent to write anything more substantial. Weirdly, the people who get most fussy about it tend to be sci-fi fantasy authors, which are the genres that generally have just about the same low bar to entry and chaff to wheat ratio that erotica and sex writing has. Nah, son. I write smut because that's where the money is, and I self-publish because I like being in control of my own stuff. I like to think I'm a pretty solid writer, but being a starving artist sucks. This way, I get people to actually read my stuff, and I get the luxury of, in theory, at least, working on my more serious projects while still earning a living telling stories that people enjoy. Especially when you consider the amount of pointless shitty sex scenes in sci-fi and fantasy. I've heard from several Amazon Reddit that writing smut really pays, but to be sure you have a pen name. Do yourself a favor and never seek the approval of the writing community. Smut can pay. Most people write 2 or 3 poorly edited stories over the course of 6 months, put up weak covers and are surprised when their books don't sell. Definitely have a pen name, though. The benefits of being able to just burn it if it's not working, and to be able to keep your different types of smut separate, are well worth it. Also, telling writers not to seek approval is like telling the tides not to come in. We know we shouldn't, but boy, do we ever. Plus it takes some serious skill to write good smut. As a long-time scourer of AO3, I agree, the good ones seriously stand out. As a guy who reads all his porn, thank you, the difference between a quality sex story and a poor one is immediately recognizable to me. We need more good sex writers. Do you have a website where you publish your stories? I'm always looking for new good sources. Visualize. Visualize you're not visualizing, try visualizing it and base it on that. I have aphantasia dude. Threw a fish at a tree. Wait SpongeBob, we have technology. I once tried to cut down the largest tree I could find in the forest, with a herring. I'm dyslexic and during secondary school, many of my teachers told my mom that I wouldn't get into college and wouldn't do well in my state exams. I suck at exams but I still managed to get into college and work my way up. I now have 2 masters and I am doing really well in my current job where I am always thinking of out of the box ideas. Just because you think differently and cannot express myself well in exams or essays doesn't mean that you can't succeed. There is many ways to do that in life. It just took me a long time to not feel stupid due to my teachers. I'm a dog walker on the side but also run my own online business which makes pretty good money. A lot of the owners really are disrespectful and act as if I'm stupid cause I walk dogs to make money. Like I'm not stupid, I'm just trying to lose weight and get extra money while you're sitting on your couch and can't walk your own damn dog but then give me dirty looks. When I was 7, I was in 1st grade. I couldn't really run because it turned out that I had both legs wrong. I had my Achilles tendon too short, my kneecaps were outside its place and my femur was slightly 28 degrees rotated, and I had knock knees. No one knew about this, only me who was suffering every 4 steps lol anyway. Everyone told me I was lazy, that I should go outside and do some sport. I was a fatty because I couldn't even run. I am a giant. Everything I own is XXL, or 3XL. I was Air Force and of course all my gear, helmet, armor, etc. is also larger than most. When we would deploy, we had a 2-bag plus backpack rule. I am a toughest master but even I can only squeeze 6 pounds sugar in a 5-pound bag, but I needed 10 pounds and there, getting in trouble for leaving useless shit behind, but having a bag drag where they account for all necessities, like a fucking comb and shampoo, when I have shaved my head bald since I was 20, is ridiculous. I have dyslexia and at age 15 still couldn't tell my left hand from my right. I also had a lot of trouble learning to read and write. I got written off by a lot of teachers. Turns out I'm pretty good at analysis even if I struggle with the basics. I ended up with a PhD. That stupid make an L trick? Yeah, just put one hand palm up and you either make an L twice or not at all. H. Excuse me. Do you know where I can find garlic powder here? Me. EHH. I don't work here. H. Never mind. I'll ask someone that's not stupid. Me. Well, okay then. I don't work here, lady. A while back I had a teacher that sucked. She was very broad while talking about things and I was very analytical. For example, she said the papers are on the counter. We had multiple counters, so I asked which one. She accused me of having attention issues. I'm now 2 grades ahead in math, the hardest class to pay attention in. Checkmate, Mrs. Dick. Note, that isn't her real name obviously, but it fits her well. Did one of those minute math tests, where you need to do as many of the questions in a minute to help memorize. I did not do well. Went to pass it in and the teacher said in front of the entire class, the Bajans, you are as slow as molasses. That one hurt for a while. Would realize after finishing school I am smart, just not too good at memorizing. I was told by a trainer at work and her equally judgmental friend that I got nothing but boobs just because I act stupid sometimes and don't engage in their so-called intellectual arguments. Fuck, this bitch has got boobs and brains. Empty cans really make a lot of noise. When I was in 2nd grade, in the 80s, I told the teacher I had a theory that there was a black hole in the center of our galaxy. That's the dumbest idea I've ever heard. Turns out 8-year-old me was right. When I was 19 I got a job as a pizza delivery driver. I found out I have horrible spatial memory and could never remember the directions to any place I've been before. This was before GPS devices were widespread. My boss really thought I was stupid. He couldn't believe I was going to college and now I have a master's degree. I guess I'll never have that career as a pizza delivery driver. I still get lost going to places I've been before plenty of times and need to use my GPS for pretty much everywhere I go. Sports. My dad was a freaking legend in his school, and a recognizable name in the whole region, with his rugby skills. And I came out as a nerd that spends all his day programming code and playing video games table RPG. The amount of mean looks, insults and people saying I'm a failure during my youth was a bit too much. Because I'm a programmer, just extremely interested in web development, I'm supposed to be a mathematician genius. I'm not. I failed math 3 years in a row. Yesterday I received my first A for math in my entire high school career. I'm kinda proud of myself. In high school and early college, I was very bad at anything physical. A lot of that was because I didn't put time into anything physical because I didn't have the energy. I just wanted to sleep and eat. I did very well in school though and let that be my main thing. Turns out I was crazy depressed with BPD-OCD. Once I started getting help, I started working out more and got a job that requires physical labor. Now I'm still doing well in school and work out 5 times a week. I lost 50 pounds and got to a healthy weight and have started developing muscle. I still struggle with my mental health and that can make simple tasks a struggle. But identifying why I couldn't seem to do some things has helped me start overcoming those roadblocks. Despite the fact that my 12-year-old niece can't read, my sister and I spent years pushing her school district to put her in advanced gifted classes. They refused because she was getting B's and C's and could hardly read. Last year we got her tested. Turns out she has a crazy high IQ and severe dyslexia. So we took the district to court. Now she's in all advanced gifted classes with a few accommodations and she's getting straight A's. Just like we said. Assholes. My son has always been very intelligent and I thought he was gifted. Then he started school and he's been pulling C's, D's, and F's. I finally couldn't take it and took him to get tested. Sure enough, he's got high functioning ADHD and anxiety. I wish I would have tested him sooner. But, I thought ADHD meant hyper and he's never really been hyper, so I was convinced he was just lazy. ADHD inattentive type, I assume. So many kids suffering through the so smart but lazy thing only to find out ADHD later in life. At this point I think we should just screen all kids for certain common issues. Dyslexia, ADHD, and autism. Most girls aren't diagnosed until late teens, adulthood. Hello, this is currently happening to me freshman and sophomore year. I struggled with about a 67 average. Now in junior year after being medicated I am sitting at a 90 average. It just makes you feel stupid when you don't know what's wrong with you, man. Especially when I go to a prestigious high school so literally everyone is better looks down upon you. I feel you. I'm an adult woman who didn't figure out she was autistic until her late 40s. It was discovered when our daughter was diagnosed as autistic in her late teens. The only silver lining I have for you is at least you figured it out before college and adulthood. I realize that's small comfort now. I had to re-evaluate several decades of my life. I think making those tests as regular as the sight and hearing tests I had to take as a kid would be very helpful. Great idea. Just as an aside, I think it's important to mention that having any form of ADHD shouldn't be seen as a necessary burden later in life. School isn't great for people with ADHD usually, but certain careers can actually benefit from it. I work as an ICU nurse, and we have to multitask and interpret data on the fly constantly. My last shift, no HIPAA, I worked with one person alone and basically made sure their kidney, cardiovascular and lung support kept them alive, on top of everything else. I've met several nurses who have obvious ADHD and they are 100%, across the board, better than my numbers. It's like they're computers with 100 core processors or something. I have ADD and am not traditionally considered hyper, and I kind of hate the way it basically disqualifies some sufferers from their diagnosis. I was always good at school because I wanted to learn everything and found it interesting enough to pay attention. I was in a ton of extracurriculars, but that's what they want everyone to do, so I flew under the radar there, too. In the end it's my inability to housewife properly that finally got me diagnosed as ADD instead of being simply lazy. The district are assholes for not believing that a C student should be placed in the advanced classes, despite the fact that my 12-year-old niece can't read. My sister and I spent years pushing her school district to put her in advanced gifted classes. They refused because she was getting B's and C's and could hardly read. Sounds like a really unreasonable school district. Kid can't read for shit. Related adults, you put her in the advanced classes or there will be hell to pay. I mean, as she is 12 and can't read, there is either something wrong with her, which is stated in the original comment, or the teacher is very bad at teaching reading. Not the kid's fault. She could still be smart. The accommodations are why's doing better. You also didn't need court to test your child for a disorder. You should have done that on your own. Not being able to read and problems with language are big signs of disorders. Do you know how many my kid is the next Bill Gates parents there are? If they believed every single one of them, then schools would be useless. They're assholes for doing their job and their due diligence. I don't really buy this story, but even if it's true, the school administration is within its rights and reason to reject the demands of random relatives of a student who has only demonstrated average academic capabilities to place that student in advanced classes. It wouldn't make sense from the administration's perspective. They're not assholes, they're being responsible. When I was a teenager I felt like accommodations were just a way to artificially boost grades. Now, I'm an actual empathetic adult, and I am astonished and horrified at the amount of talent and productivity our society has just discarded because the people possessing that talent were just a little bit different. I mean, the guy in a wheelchair isn't going to be a stevedore, and the lady with dyslexia probably isn't going to be a copy editor, but through our insane ideas of what academic success or physical capability look like, we've locked people out of places they could shine. I was always bullied for the way I climbed trees. People called me Fish Boy. My whole life, I've believed I was nothing, a mere stain in the existence of humanity. So one day, I set out to prove everyone wrong. I gathered them at the dock of Finch Lake. I was finally going to show them what I was, a human being. I was prepared. I trained for weeks on end, and finally garnered the courage to act, with everyone watching. I got set. This was it. My time is now. So I rammed a fucking boat straight into the dock. Nobody messes with Fish Boy. Albert Einstein once said judge fish by their ability to climb a tree, so they can evolve and learn to climb trees. At some point halfway through my elementary school years, 3rd or 4th grade-ish, we got a new principal who decided to switch my school to a super STEM focused curriculum. I am much more creative and artistic, and my standing in the advanced learning program was predicated on my writing. drawing, and musical capabilities. After the switch, I was kicked out of the ALP because I really struggle with mathematics and could barely do division and multiplication, and the new qualifying exam was almost solely algebraic functions and such. It caused a huge blow to my self-esteem and confidence that I still struggle with 2 decades later. This saying is too often used as an excuse for not exerting yourself. Of course I didn't do well on the math test, I'm not math-minded and you didn't put in enough practice, didn't push yourself outside your comfort zone. But you realistically can't be good at everything. There is bound to be a field expertise where you will not shine no matter how hard you try. I believe that's what OP is asking. But having a stupid attitude about it does you nothing. Using the fact I'm not very good at chemistry as an excuse to get bad grades and not try is what the dude you commented on was talking about. You're not expected to be a neurosurgeon, but you can at least give a legitimate effort to pass algebra and read To Kill a Mockingbird. Yes, but I think the thread is supposed to apply to people who have tried doing those things and failed, whereupon they have judged themselves to be unskilled at certain things. I mean, I did 4 years of algebra in high school and never got above a C+. I fucking tried a lot, went to tutors and everything. Meanwhile I was in AP History and English, composed orchestral music, did decently well in chemistry and even geometry, but algebra, I've never been able to do it very well despite trying for years. In college I even had to take 2 algebra courses in order to graduate and I still never got above a C, but I did well enough in my major to have several papers published in journals. I tried and put in the effort, but if my worth resided on my ability to do algebra I'd be destitute and begging for change. But since I majored in English and did great in my major, I'm destitute and begging for change. Performing well at a test in school is not a sign of being good at the subject. It's demonstrating an understanding of the learned material. If you can't pass a high school level math test, it is precisely because you didn't study or seek instruction or push yourself past your comfort level to learn the material. And this is said as someone who hates math and did poorly at it in school. I'm shit at math and I blame myself for not putting in the work. I also blame the math teacher I had for the first 8 years in school, not because he was bad. He was just from the old school and didn't really make sure everyone understood. It wasn't only until the last 2 years of school where I had a teacher who saw how I struggled, and put in an effort to teach it so I understood. And I am forever grateful to her for showing me that math class didn't have to suck. I agree with this. It was often my go-to for not doing great in math in high school. I just didn't have much patience for it. But, as it turns out, I'm finding now in uni that it's sort of true. One of my favorite classes I've taken was actually discrete mathematics. I worked my ass off at that course and still didn't turn up with a grade anywhere near the top of the class. But I was proud of myself for having worked hard at something that doesn't come naturally to me. But, now that I'm reflecting on it, maybe my using not being math-minded as an excuse created a sort of self-fulfilling prophecy. Had I spent more time and energy on my math courses earlier in life, maybe I would have done better in discrete. Well, I used to be told this by teachers. Told I wasn't trying hard enough. Despite showing gifted tendencies in everything else, I was less than average at math. Turns out I have learning disability around numbers and math, and doing math 2 hours a day to try to just keep up wasn't the solution. And I didn't need to push myself so hard. Nowadays, I have a job with lots of math, and I perform well. The solution was a calculator, lol. He never said that. All my German teachers, my family and strangers, I live in Germany, constantly only criticizing my work. Not one shred of positivity. Here's the kicker. I have a reading writing disability and all my teachers and family knew that. I have documents that prove the disability. I honestly still can't cope with criticism of my writing. My boss made fun of me for not being able to retain numbers in my head or do all of math quickly and without a calculator. But then she brought her unfinished essay to work and I edited for her, and it was atrocious. I suck at math, but I can write decently, and she may suck at writing, but she was great at math. At least I didn't make fun of her all the time for having the writing ability of a second grader. I dropped out of high school a little over a year ago, and 95% of my peers, teachers and administrators of the school openly thought and told me that I wouldn't amount to anything without a diploma. A year later, I'm being taught how to weld one-on-one, and I just recently started a factory job, making $18 an hour on a swing shift schedule, which will increase to $21 HR after my 6-month probation period. My end goal is to be a welder with the same company. At work several years ago, I was tasked with designing and releasing 100 plus variations of a semi-complex system. The department I worked in rarely got assigned this type of work. The first phase was to make 3D models of all the variations. Next phase was to release those variations so the parts would code correctly on a bill of materials for the factory. Because of the number of variations, I found it a lot easier to do both phases at once. 1 week before the first phase was due, nasty emails were flying about my poor performance. I guess the groups that normally do that work are done early. I got all my work done by the first phase deadline and braced myself for the design review. My work was good and they asked if I could be done with the next phase within 2 months. I told them it was already done and showed them the work. Room went silent for a few minutes as the people that were trying to get me kicked off the project realized I beat everyone else to the finish line despite having 10x the work. Judged my math skills. My roommate is no good at math, but his skills with anything art related are fantastic. Riddles are absolutely no problem, and artistic self-expression, like poetry, drawing, come very naturally to him. Memorizing dialogue for acting and songs is what he does best, and every year around this time he ends up in some sort of performance. Hopefully he can find something in that kind of skill field. The reverse, actually, because I was doing very well in school with little effort. I thought I was smart. They judged the fish by its ability to swim, then it had to be outside of its tank in a cheap apartment. About 1,000 years ago I was a mildly intelligent but indifferent student in high school. The idea of university never appealed to me. When I graduated, I immediately began to learn a trade with my uncle, and loved it. After a year, I went back to the school to visit one of my teachers, who was happy to see me. She brightly asked me what university I was attending. Without any trepidation, as blithe as a toddler, I proudly told her that I was a carpet layer. The look on her face was eloquent with shock that quickly turned into contempt. I didn't comment on it, but I said to myself, doctors and lawyers need carpet too. I am a prototypical NFL offensive lineman in size, so every time someone meets me I am assumed to be a lunk. I have a degree in electrical engineering and work in that career, so, yep, every time I meet someone. As a kid, my much older brother would really frost my cookies when he'd say to me in a condescending tone, "You're such a girl." He'd do things like pull the cable out of the distributor on our pickup, thinking I wouldn't be able to figure out why it wouldn't start. I'd plug the cable in, drive where I needed to go, park the truck in the same spot when I returned and attached the same cable. He'd pull stunts like this all the time while I grew up, and I figure my way around it. Irritated the shit out of me. But in the end I learned I could do whatever a boy could do, and that had a transformative impact on me. For your information, I'm old enough to be a grandmother to most Redditors. The school system does this to students. I know someone who is on the autism spectrum and struggles with bad anxiety. During high school, whenever he had to work on a group project, his anxiety would go through the roof and he would often have a breakdown. His teachers, guidance counselors, and other support workers tried hard to help him overcome his deficiencies. He barely graduated high school. What they didn't know, because he never told them, was that in the evenings at home he taught himself various programming languages. By the time he finished high school he was a pretty proficient programmer. 5 years later and he is now a very proficient programmer. He even developed his own video game which he sells online. When I discovered that introverts weren't broken extroverts, my entire fucking life, called to a technical interview and threw HR questions instead. The workplace. When I was fresh out of college, a lot of the long-time employees at the company I worked for didn't take me seriously, even though I was perfectly capable and had new ideas. Meanwhile, they refused to budge from the old way of doing things, just because it might upset their comfort zone. When I was younger I studied for the SAT and didn't do that well, and my brother told me I should just opt out of taking it because the score I'd get would be a joke to colleges. I believed him, opted out and attended community college. Then I took the SAT during my first year of CC and I got a 1251,600. A dude in high school looked at me straight in the eyes and said, "You're too good looking to be intelligent." Weirdest moment of my life, as I wasn't able to respond to this crap. Deep depression. Example. I know the know-how of electrical trade, but I discovered I'm terrified of being on a higher ladder with no anchor point attached. We do this with kids a lot. We expect them to know what we know and forget their blank slates. It's called school. My 12 years in fucking school. I was at a CrossFit competition. A local one done by my neighbor box. I entered in it, despite being doing exercise for at least 3 years. However, I was doing cross for a year or so. I was between the intermediate class. I couldn't get in the first 3 place of the competition. Despite I have a good strength training, I really suck at resistance. I was unable to finish it properly because I got too exhausted at the middle of it. There was a 30 jump over the box of 24 inches, then 10 deadlifts 95 pounds and 200 meters run AMRAP. I couldn't handle it despite being so easy exercises, but because was a limited time WOD, I failed the competition. I felt so stupid, don't be able to get to 3rd place even. That was in middle June of this year, but since then, I've trained and I believe that if I can enter a competition again I would certainly get a good tear in it. However, that still haunts me and make me feel awkward and really stupid tbh lol. Well, my 6th grade teacher said, "You're never going to become a surgeon because, well, let's face it, you're just not smart enough. You got 14/20 questions right on the multiplying and dividing decimals. Sorry hun, well look at me now Mr. Hawes, I'm going to Stanford Med School next year, so suck it." Now imagine your teacher going to see doctor and meets you. That would be the best day of my life, except it's gonna be 13 years before I become an attending though, so 13 years until you track down your teacher and replace his local doctor, you mean? The waiting game is the best game. Why would you lie about something like this? LOL, just 3 months ago you were 15 according to a previous comment of yours. Nice, I love when this happens. If I recall correctly, Stanford is non-rolling, meaning decisions for next year's entering class come out in Feb/March. Edit. It's too early for you to know that you're going to be a Stanford med student next year, let alone a practicing surgeon. On top of that, they got called out by someone else and claimed they are graduating from high school next year. Yeah, like you go from high school to med school. For me, in college as a biology major, my chem professor got mad at the whole class for not doing well in the required general chemistry course. He was all, "You'll be doctors someday and someone's life will depend on it," and internally I was like, bitch, I am not pre-med, I just wanna study fucking birds. Well, I don't care if Einstein didn't say it. I feel like that every day. I'm a fully transitioned FTM and feel like I'm always going to be judged as a second-class citizen. I've done everything legally and then get denied jobs because my birth name comes back on background checks. My background check comes back clean because I'm honest and have been law-abiding all my life. I just wish employers would obey non-discrimination laws in their city and state and realize not everyone is a straight binary individual. Also mind their own business. Being told to check my privilege when I grew up dirt ass poor from a broken family. If a person uses this quote in their presentation, you can safely ignore most of it, as you can be assured that they don't know how to properly research their citations. Albert Einstein once said, "If 95% of the quotes cited to me on the internet are fake, why do they keep reposting them?" And Isaac Newton said, "Op is a karma whore for reposting this fake quote." When one Redditor suggested I know nothing about women and has never been with one because she implied I thought she had stretch marks because she had kid, even though I never said that. I have had a well-traveled life and several relationships in my past, plus was married for 6 years, and I am a father to PPL judge PPL because of their insecurities. Einstein didn't kill himself. What if tree climbing is what is needed of you? Ever since I was a young kid I was made out to be a fucking idiot because I couldn't grasp math. It just wasn't my jam. I've now graduated top 5% in my university in a social science, and I think all the time about how much I would have excelled if the system didn't force kids to do subjects they are just not wired to do. If the system didn't force kids to do subjects they are just not wired to do. The intent is to produce well-rounded adults, but sometimes that turns out to be a short-sighted goal. Maybe they should differentiate earlier, and let high school students pick one subject to take the honors version, and in exchange they don't have to take one of their other subjects. Like if you decide to take high school calculus, you can drop art. Or if you take advanced literature, you can drop math. Or if you take advanced programming and data structures, you can drop pay.